Chapter 599. The direction in which Yang Chun rushed out was the room reserved for the bear and the wolf. That was the room he rented, and he had the right to enter the door. As long as he could rush in, his safety could be guaranteed. Anyway, he had rented the room for a few years. Even if these guys were ruthless, it was impossible for them to guard him for so many years. The four Yuanying stage ancestors were frightened by Yang Chen's voice, and they let Yang Chen escape, and they were furious. They didn't want to think about it, and directly chased after him. The figure of Yang Chen was in front, and the figures of the four people were behind, and they disappeared like the wind and lightning. However, what had just happened had already caused hundreds of spiritual awareness to sweep over, and the owners of the spiritual awareness seemed to have guessed what had happened. The city was not small, and Yang Chen fled at full speed, but it took him a stick of incense to get there. The four Yuanying stage ancestors behind him, even with all their efforts, they did not catch up with Yang Chen. At most, they could only keep a distance from Yang Chen, seeing that he had already seen the house over there. And when Yang Chen was about to rush in, at the door of the room, a strange leopard monster suddenly appeared. The leopard head showed a ferocious smile and looked at Yang Chen viciously. The other party had already considered that Yang Chen would escape here, and even thought about this step. However, the leopard monster was only a master in the late Jidan stage. Yang Chen gritted his teeth, and the direction did not change, and continued to rush over. At first glance, the leopard monster was related to the leopard Yuanying stage master, who was abolished by Yang Chen. Seeing Yang Chen rushing over, he did not show weakness and directly rushed up. Yang Chen's fist, in the process of the charge, had already been waved out with a scream that made people's hearts chill, smashed towards the leopard Jidan stage master. Not to be outdone, the leopard demon stretched out his hand as well. However, his hand suddenly turned into a leopard's claw. His sharp fingernails, which were more than a foot long, shone with a cold light as they met Yang Chen's fist. Ding! The fist and the sharp claw collided, emitting a crisp sound, as if two metal utensils had collided. Then, to everyone's surprise, the sharp claws broke into several pieces. Yang Chen's fist did not dissipate and directly smashed into the leopard demon's hand. Crack! Accompanied by the sound of bones shattering, the leopard demon's fist was directly shattered, followed by his arm, shoulder, and half of his body. The two figures only made contact in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. However, Yang Chen rushed over in one piece, while the leopard demon that blocked him only had half of its body left. Junior Leopard. Behind Yang Chen, there was suddenly a heart-wrenching scream, and then a huge pressure directly enveloped the top of Yang Chen's head. Yang Chen's body stopped, but in this moment, an expert had already rushed in front of Yang Chen and stopped Yang Chen. He did not attack from behind Yang Chen, because he was afraid that he could not destroy Yang Chen in one move, and Yang Chen would escape. Of course, there was another consideration. The expert was afraid that he could not control his attack and kill Yang Chen, which would be very bad. It was not allowed to kill people in the city. If he attacked from behind Yang Chen, once he used too much force, he would be doomed eternally. In this way, Yang Chen's retreat was blocked, and Yang Chen could only wait to be captured. Yang Chen, who was blocked in the way of survival, also began to fight desperately. Boom! Another punch was thrown out, and this punch directly hit the figure that surpassed him. The one who rushed over was also a leopard head monster race cultivator. Yang Chen made a move behind him, but he turned around in a hurry. With a bang, his palms and Yang Chen's fists intersected, making a huge explosion. A force as heavy as a mountain came crashing down with earth-shattering force. The leopard demon did not expect that Yang Chen would have such great power. With a click, even with the spiritual power to protect his body, his palms still became bloody in an instant, as if it was hit by a huge hammer, and his bones were all broken. Fortunately, he noticed that something was wrong and immediately retreated so that he could offset a large part of the force, and the other parts of his body were not hurt. But this time, it directly made him break out in a cold sweat. This calf turned out to have such great power. However, Yang Chen's 2 consecutive attacks had already allowed the 3 Yuanying stage masters who were chasing after him to catch up. If Yang Chen did not leave, he would fall into the encirclement of the 4 Yuanying stage monster cultivators. Without thinking about it, Yang Chen had already fled in a panic. Many people saw this scene, but no one would doubt that Yang Chen had a premeditated plan. The direction in which Yang Chen escaped was the direction of the strange pool in the center of the city. The 4 Yuanying stage monster cultivators would not let Yang Chen escape in this situation, and they chased after him without stopping. There was no illumination device in the city at night, and it was dark. Yang Chen released his spiritual awareness to observe the surrounding environment, and the 4 Yuanying stage monster cultivators were obviously better than Yang Chen. They could see everything in the dark with their instincts. In some cases, the monster race had an innate advantage over humans. The city was very big, but Yang Chen let go of his speed and ran wildly. It did not take too long to escape from his side to the pool. In less than half an hour, he had already escaped to the vicinity. Of course, in the process of escaping, Yang Chen also showed his strength very appropriately. The guy who chased the fastest had already been crippled by him. Another leopard monster in the early Yuanying stage was punched by Yang Chen after a sudden pause, and his sternum was almost broken. Fortunately, the monster race paid the most attention to body refining when cultivating, so it did not lead to a disaster. However, he still did not escape the fate of vomiting blood and being injured. A calf in the early Jidan stage, under the siege of 4 Yuanying stage monster cultivators and a late Jidan stage master, crippled the late Jidan stage guy and injured 2 Yuanying stage masters. Don't look at how Yang Chen was now running for his life. But if this record was taken out, it would not be him who would lose face. However, the 4 Yuanying stage masters must take down Yang Chen this time. Otherwise, they would not be able to explain to the companion who was crippled by Yang Chen. It would also make many people in the city doubt their strength, which would threaten the living environment of the leopard clan. In this kind of thing, they would never take the lives and treatment of the whole clan as a joke. Running all the way, Yang Chen's figure had already rushed to the vicinity of the pool. The several monster cultivators behind him were in a hurry to catch up, but they did not notice this. Suddenly, Yang Chen's figure came to a sudden stop. This time, the 4 masters who were chasing after him were on guard, and they all made a move. Everyone held back, but if the attacks of the 4 people hit at the same time, Yang Chen would definitely lose his ability to act directly. In the face of the attack, Yang Chen did not dodge, but turned and rushed directly to the guy closest to him. Chapter 600. Bang, 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 bang. Almost at the same time, the attacks of the 4 people all fell on Yang Chen's body. Yang Chen's face also showed a painful look, and the blood in his mouth was sprayed on the face of the opposite master. Caught off guard, he was sprayed by Yang Chen's blood, and the opposite leopard monster spirit power was shocked, and the blood was directly shaken. But at this moment, Yang Chen actually hugged him by the waist. Wondering how Yang Chen would do this, he suddenly found that Yang Chen suddenly opened his spiritual awareness and stimulated the surrounding crazily. Still in a daze, he suddenly saw the surrounding environment, and suddenly his heart was broken. This turned out to be a spiritual awareness forbidden zone. Yang Chen actually opened his spiritual awareness crazily here. A huge force pulled Yang Chen towards the pool, and Yang Chen's hand were holding the unlucky leopard monster. The 2 of them hugged each other and flew into the pool. The other 3 leopard monsters watched their companions being held by Yang Chen and fell into the pool together, but there was nothing they could do. With a splash, the bodies of Yang Chen and the leopard monster fell into the water, only causing a small ripple, not even a splash of water, and disappeared without a trace. The 3 companions of the leopard monster, or would they dare to use their spiritual awareness to explore the situation of their companions? The Yuanying stage masters who were swallowed here were not 1 or 2. Everyone understood that once Yang Chen and his companions fell in, there was no possibility of them coming out again. Although Yang Chen was also dead, it seemed that Yang Chen, a little guy in the early Jidan stage, had abolished a Yuanying stage master, flew a master in the late Jidan stage, seriously injured an early Yuanying stage master, and slightly injured another Yuanying stage master. Now he pulled a Yuanying stage master to die together. In any case, Yang Chun was indeed worthy of the word strong. Their battle had caused quite a commotion, and countless people had witnessed this scene. Many people were shaking their heads and sighing. Such a valiant little guy with a boundless future was destroyed because he offended these overbearing fellows. But more people were secretly pondering in their hearts. Yang Chun, a little guy in the early stage of Gold Core, could destroy a Yuanying, kill one, and seriously injure another. The power of the Leopard clan did not seem to be as powerful as they showed. There seemed to be other benefits to ponder over. As soon as Yang Chun entered the water, he let go of that guy. A leopard monster in the Yuanying stage is not worth Yang Chun's desperate. He didn't even open the body protection of the Golden Bell. Those guys didn't hurt him at all. The so-called injury and vomiting blood was simply made by Yang Chun himself. The key was that he now had an excuse to enter the pool that no one would suspect. Although this was a dangerous place in the eyes of many monster cultivators, Yang Chun believed that this was definitely the place where the first wood true essence was most likely to exist. In a dangerous place, Yang Chun certainly had to concentrate on dealing with it. The Golden Bell had been urged to the extreme by Yang Chun. Even if it was the old tree demon, it was estimated that it would be impossible to hurt Yang Chun at once. Unexpectedly, the terrifying blow that Yang Chun expected did not come. On the contrary, his body had been sinking. Although the spiritual awareness threads had already been explored, it had not been explored to the end. In the water, the scope of the exploration of the spiritual awareness was reduced by many times. The huge gravitational pull pulled Yang Chun's body and kept going down. After a while, Yang Chun discovered that although his body was still immersed in the liquid, it was no longer in the water. The water in the pool was just a cover on top of these liquids. Now Yang Chun could completely confirm this. Not far away, the body of the leopard monster was still struggling, trying to escape the huge attraction from below. However, no matter how he struggled, it was futile. Yang Chun didn't think about struggling at all, so there was no physical injury. On the contrary, the leopard monster kept struggling inside, but there was some strange blood on his body. Yang Chun could clearly feel it with his spiritual awareness. This kind of liquid could isolate the spiritual awareness more than pure water. Even if it was Yang Chun, he could only detect the movement within a few dozen feet around him. His spiritual awareness could no longer be explored further. This huge attraction from the bottom was completely aimed at the spiritual awareness. However, the three purities secret art that Yang Chun cultivated was too powerful. Although his spiritual awareness explored the pool at the beginning and was attracted by the pool, after Yang Chun entered the water and replaced it with his spiritual awareness threads, there was no such sense of bondage. If Yang Chun didn't need this attraction to guide him, Yang Chun could break away from this attraction to the spiritual awareness at any time. The leopard monster seemed very innocent. After entering the water, his spiritual awareness was already out of control, and it was impossible to take it back. Along the way, Yang Chun silently calculated the depth of the sinking. In the time of half an incense stick, he had sunk a few hundred feet. What surprised Yang Chun was that in such a deep underground, he could even occasionally notice that there were huge roots in the surrounding land when he happened to touch the edge of the liquid. The earth escape technique could only be courting death here. He would be directly locked by these strong plant roots and would no longer be able to move. In the same way, the wood escape technique was the same. In the surrounding land, there was a power of the metal attribute. Metal restrains wood, and coming meant death. The 5 elements escape technique could not reach this depth at all, and the only way seemed to be down from the pool. However, because no one had ever gone up there before, this place had become a forbidden area. So far, Yang Chun has not been aware of any killing moves. Even some unknown attacks caused by the struggling of the leopard monster were limited, far from the point of killing people. There was a lot of blood coming out, but it was only a flesh wound. For a Yuanying stage master, it was not a big deal at all. It may be that the spiritual awareness was stimulated and opened, and the leopard monster also noticed the situation on Yang Chun's side. Yang Chun didn't move at all. Sinking with the gravity, He was completely unharmed. He now immediately learned to use it, and suddenly he was no longer attacked. The two people sank so quickly for a full incense stick of time. It was calculated that they were thousands of feet deep in the ground. Suddenly, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness found that it had reached the bottom. However, the bottom of this liquid was not the ground. Yang Chen and the leopard monster just touched the bottom of the liquid, and suddenly their bodies were loose. There was no gravity anymore, but their bodies fell involuntarily and fell into a huge space. Pong, pong. The two of them were like two stones falling into a large lake below. Immediately, a pure and unparalleled power of first wood, like a fierce beast, madly drilled into the two bodies. Chapter 601. Just at the moment of contact with these strange liquids, Yang Chen's whole body seemed to be torn apart, and a severe pain passed directly from the skin to the bone marrow and to the mind. The pure first wood true essence Qi. At the moment of contact, Yang Chen immediately realized that what he fell in was not a strange liquid. It was clearly the first wood true essence. What was hard to imagine was that the amount of first wood true essence here was too large, and the form of its existence was too shocking. The first wood true essence, which was originally only in the form of spiritual Qi true essence, had condensed into a liquid here. How could this be believed? First wood true essence. Yang Chen finally understood why that guy would use a vein to describe the first wood true essence when he died. At that time, Yang Chen naively thought that there was a thin first wood true essence like an underground spirit vein. He did not expect it to be such a big lake. However, now it was impossible to guess how these first wood true essences were formed. The crazy first wood true essence, under the huge pressure of being compressed into a liquid, rushed into the bodies of the two people who fell down. No matter what kind of spiritual power Yang Chen had in his body, it was directly pressed back into his dantian by this rich first wood true essence. His body seemed to be torn apart, and every corner was crazily pouring in the first wood true essence. Just from touching the liquid surface and then entering the liquid, Yang Chen's whole person became a first wood attribute. If someone used their spiritual awareness to explore at this time, they would definitely think that Yang Chen was a pure first wood cultivator. From the inside to the outside, Yang Chen revealed a strong and incomparable first wood aura. Just after a short contact, there was such a change. Yang Chen finally understood how those Yuanying stage masters who fell down died. Bathing in this kind of first wood true essence spiritual solution, not to mention the Yuanying stage masters, even the masters of the Deshang stage, such as Hua Wanning, could not escape death. Water could carry a boat, but it could also overturn it. Drinking water was very comfortable, but if there was too much water, it could drown people. The reason was the same. Although the wood attribute masters could absorb the first wood true essence, such a huge amount of first wood true essence could directly explode people. The leopard demon that fell with Yang Chen was no longer breathing. He was not of the wood attribute. At the moment of contact with such a thick first wood true essence spiritual solution, it was equivalent to bearing the attack of that kind of pressure. In an instant, he turned into a leopard demon of the wood attribute. Then, he exploded and turned into a dust smoke, leaving no trace. The reason why Yang Chen could hold on until now was because of his wood attribute spiritual energy. In any case, Yang Chen also cultivated the first wood spirit power, and the spirit power was the attribute of the Panlai Divine Wood. Even if the pressure was huge, he could hold on for a while longer than the leopard monster. However, if Yang Chen had no other way, then Yang Chen's end would not be much different from the leopard demon. The only difference was when it happened first. The guy who told Yang Chen that there was the first wood true essence here, he didn't know if he didn't expect this situation or if he had already arranged it, waiting for Yang Chen to throw himself into the net. It was to avenge himself after his death. It was just that that person had already died, and Yang Chen couldn't know what he was thinking. Yang Chen had the first wood true secret art. He got it from someone on the Immortal Executioner stage. However, in the face of such a huge amount of first wood true essence spiritual solution, it was too late to absorb it, and it was impossible to absorb this amount of first wood true essence spiritual solution. In a flash, Yang Chen's mind quickly flashed through several processing methods, but the most reliable one was still the Penglai Divine Wood in the medicine garden. The reason why the Penglai Divine Wood was called a divine wood was because it was the purest kind of spirit wood besides the first wood true essence. At the same time, it was also the most difficult kind of spirit wood to cultivate. The reason why it was difficult to cultivate was because there was a lack of enough first wood spirit power that could make the Penglai Divine would look up to. Now, the first wood true essence spiritual solution was simply the best thing to cultivate the Penglai Divine Wood. After making a decision in an instant, Yang Chun immediately began to control it. The first wood true essence spiritual solution entered Yang Chen's body and was immediately controlled by Yang Chun to enter the Penglai Divine Wood Forest and Medicine Garden. Now, in the Penglai Divine Wood Forest, there were dozens of Penglai Divine Woods. After the last thunder pomegranate absorbed enough thunder to nourish it, for a long time, the Penglai Divine Woods did not change much. This pure and incomparable first wood true essence spiritual solution approached the roots of the Penglai Divine Wood. Yang Chun immediately noticed that the Penglai Divine would seem to suddenly have a spiritual nature, and the feeling of the whole burst out. Suddenly, the spiritual solution around Yang Chun seemed to suddenly disappear, and a vacuum area appeared. In this gap, Yang Chun directly took out the sword embryo of the first wood flying sword. With a thought, the sword embryo was directly restored to the original Penglai Divine Wood trunk and the length of the main root. The thickest trunk of the Penglai Divine Wood was dozens of feet long, and the length of the main root was several times this. This time, it reached the bottom of the first wood true essence spiritual solution lake, and the height was more than enough. It smoothly pushed Yang Chun out of the spiritual solution. With a long sigh, Yang Chen's cold sweat came out at this time. If he delayed for a while, maybe he would directly be blown up by the first wood true essence spiritual solution. Now, the pure first wood true essence spiritual solution had the first wood flying sword embryo as an intermediary. When it was passed to Yang Chun, it was no longer so stressful. And with the Penglai Divine Wood absorbing in the pure bottle medicine garden, Yang Chun could already confirm that his life was not in danger. Standing at the top of the first wood flying sword embryo, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness thread was sent out again. It was strange to say that in this place, the pulling force against the spiritual awareness disappeared without a trace, and Yang Chun could easily detect the surrounding situation. It was not a very large space, basically the same size as the pool above, with a radius of dozens of feet. However, the depth of the first wood true essence spiritual solution was somewhat shocking. Standing at the top of the first wood flying sword embryo, which was more than 200 feet high, it was only 1 foot higher than the surface of the liquid. It could be imagined how much first wood true essence spiritual solution there was here. Above was the 10,000 trees forest, and there must be a formation that gathered the little bit of first wood true essence produced in the entire 10,000 trees forest here. It was not known how many years it took to have such a scale. Since there was such a strong first wood true essence, if Yang Chun did not cultivate the first wood true secret art, it would be too sorry for himself. What was the purpose of coming here to adventure? Was it not to absorb the first wood true essence to cultivate the first wood true secret art? Chapter 602. For Yang Chun, if he cultivated the first wood true secret art in this realm, even if he let go and casually absorbed the first wood true essence, it would only take him a year's worth of spiritual power. At present, this huge lake of first wood true essence spiritual solution, even if there were 10 or 8 great principal golden immortals who wanted to cultivate the first wood true secret art, it could completely support it. With so much first wood true essence spiritual solution, instead of giving it to the monster race, it was better to give it to Yang Chun. The Penglai Divine would needed a lot of first wood true essence to irrigate. Wasn't this a great opportunity? In addition, the first wood true essence was also a rare good thing for the medicine garden's purified bottle. In particular, he could take advantage of so much first wood true essence to thoroughly refine the medicine garden's purified bottle. Of course, the most important first wood flying sword's sword embryo also needed further sacrificial refining. However, what was sacrificial refining? Wasn't it just using a lot of true essence to scour the inside of the sword embryo little by little? Now Yang Chun wanted to use the first wood flying sword's sword embryo to absorb the first wood true essence. Wasn't a logical process? The first wood flying sword's sword embryo returned to its original size, and Yang Chun could even easily sit on the top to cultivate. The huge trunk was an excellent platform for cultivation. The huge first wood true essence, along the first wood flying sword's sword embryo, part of it entered the body of Yang Chun, and part of it entered the purified bottle medicine garden. After being purified by the purified bottle, it was absorbed by the Penglai divine wood. Fortunately, it was the Penglai divine wood. If it was replaced by any other first wood species, in the face of this kind of concentrated first wood true essence, it would also end up exploding. In the process of slowly absorbing the first wood true essence, Yang Chun was also distracted to observe the changes in the medicine garden's purified bottle, in case of a carelessness, destroying the medicine garden's purified bottle. Seeing that the liquefied first wood true essence entered the medicine garden, it was directly sent to the fifth soil layer at the foot of the Penglai divine wood. Subsequently, the Penglai divine wood, as if it was alive, began to grow wildly at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was only a day and a night, and the Penglai divine wood was thicker than a finger. This was the Penglai divine wood. When Yang Chun used the fifth earth layer to sacrificial refine the medicine garden, it was only to make the Penglai divine would take root more stable. As for growth, it was only the occasional sacrificial refining of the medicine garden that had the opportunity. On weekdays, even during the decades when Yang Chun was in seclusion, the Penglai divine wood in the medicine garden had never changed. Even if there was, it could not be seen at all. However, under the irrigation of this pure first wood true essence, one day and one night, the trunk became thicker. Although the change did not seem to be big. In normal times, if the Penglai divine would wanted to thicken a finger, it was impossible without 100 years of effort. The first wood true essence entered the medicine garden and was not completely absorbed by the Penglai divine wood. It also slowly nourished the other first wood in the medicine garden. Because there was no power of thunder for a long time, the thunder pomegranate tree stopped growing. Under the nourishment of this powerful first wood true essence, it began to grow wildly again. The flowers withered and bloomed. Almost every day and night, the thunder pomegranate tree would experience a growth cycle, adding 1 year of age. More than 20 thunder pomegranates began to slowly become thicker and taller. This was not a complete, sacrificial refining process. Whether it was for the first wood flying sword embryo or the pure bottle medicine garden, this time it was just a simple process of spiritual power brushing. The spiritual power of the pure bottle medicine garden had already been filled up unknowingly, and even the looming portal in the medicine garden had changed a little. However, Yang Chun did not pay attention to this now. He was already immersed in the pleasure of cultivating the first wood true secret art. The main purpose of coming here was to cultivate the first wood true secret art and condense the first wood golden dan. The others, no matter how much, were extra. Autumn went to winter. Yang Chun had been cultivating for a full half a year on the first wood true essence spiritual solution lake. There was no change in the 4 seasons at all here. The sun rose and set. There was not even a bit of light. Yang Chun still relied on the operation of the spiritual power in his body to judge the time. He had already cultivated the 5th earth, 7th metal, 10th water secret art of the Great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art. Now he was cultivating the first wood true secret art, but also in this place where the first wood true essence was liquefied. Even if Yang Chun was a non-wood attribute pig, it was enough for him to get a glimpse of the door, not to mention that Yang Chun was a Hotian full attribute monster. The completion of the first wood true secret art could only be described as a matter of course. When the complete first wood true secret art was finally completed, Yang Chun finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, his sea of consciousness had more than doubled again. The original entity of the Panlai Divine wood, although it still maintained the shape of the Panlai Divine wood, the aura that escaped was completely the aura of the first wood true essence. The towering pillar of the Panlai Divine wood was more than several times thicker than the original, and it abruptly pushed Yang Chen's sea of consciousness up to hundreds of feet. Even though the size of his sea of consciousness did not increase, it was still at least twice as big as it was before. Wood gave birth to fire, and the change of the Panlai Divine would directly trigger the change of the two fire dragons of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire. In the end, this change occurred with the change of the first wood pillar. The length of the two fire dragons was also stretched from the original 100 feet to 200 feet. The flames on the body were raging, but there was no change. The spiritual awareness began to improve again until it reached the peak of the early Deshang stage, and then it stopped. However, Yang Chen did not have time to feel the changes in the sea of consciousness and the true essence. Then, the first wood true essence, which was already at the peak of the foundation stage, began to smoothly enter the process of solidifying Dan. In the body, the first wood spirit power rushed to the dantian, and the meridians were instantly empty, but they were soon completely filled by the influx of the first wood true essence from the outside world. Solidifying Dan was a process that required a lot of spirit power, so it took at least half a year to absorb the spirit power to meet the massive spirit power needed for the spiritual power compression during the solidifying Dan. But for Yang Chen at this time, the outside first wood true essence lake, so far, had only dropped less than 3 points of height. The hundreds of feet deep first wood true essence spiritual solution pool was simply an inexhaustible source of spirit power that could be used at any time. The spirit power needed to solidify Dan made Yang Chen absorb the first wood true essence several times faster. The first wood true essence spiritual solution was like it was free, madly rushing into Yang Chen's body. Of course, these first wood true essence spiritual solutions were indeed free. It would take at least half a year to solidify Dan, but on this huge first wood true essence spiritual solution pool, it took only 1 month to complete the process that would take 6 months to complete. Chapter 603. A turquoise golden Dan, formed in the dantian of Yang Chen, spun and spun, exuding a pure first wood aura. This was the first golden Dan of Yang Chen's Great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art. At the moment of condensing, the surrounding space even trembled. The first wood true essence spiritual solution below, at least a thick layer, was directly absorbed by Yang Chen into the body and filled in the first wood golden Dan. The first wood golden Dan almost instantly absorbed this large amount of first wood true essence spiritual solution, and then the size of the golden Dan swelled like a balloon, quickly surpassing the third fire and fourth fire golden Dan, becoming the largest one. With this alone, the cultivation of the first wood spiritual power directly surpassed the third fire and fourth fire, becoming the dominant spiritual power. Yang Chen's body also began to change. He was originally a cultivator with a fire attribute. Now, with a glance, one could determine that Yang Chen was a cultivator with a wood attribute. The golden Dan was formed, and the sea of consciousness began to change again after only a month. This time, it was the promotion to the Jidan stage. Not only did the sea of consciousness not increase, but it also shrank a little. Everything that built the sea of consciousness was directly condensed again, shrinking a bit, becoming 4/5 of the original size. The degree of conciseness of the spiritual awareness was higher than before, and the whole structure was more stable than before. After shrinking, it seemed that with the increase of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness, it began to slowly return to its original size. The spiritual awareness also climbed all the way to the limit of the peak early Deshang stage, only 1 step away from entering the realm of the middle Deshang stage. After condensing the Dan, Yang Chen, the wood attribute dominated and began to spontaneously absorb the first wood true essence here. Although the speed was not as terrifying as when the Dan was formed, it was several times faster than when the Dan was condensed before. Because of the improvement of Yang Chen's cultivation base, The speed of the first wood flying sword and the medicine garden polite divine, Wood's absorption of the first wood true essence spiritual solution also doubled. Yang Chun even had an illusion that his own first wood true essence spiritual power had become the first wood true essence spiritual solution, and it had a vague connection with the first wood true essence spiritual solution outside. In the dark, Yang Chun had a feeling that he could make these first wood true essence spiritual solutions suddenly erupt at any time and destroy this place. All around was the first wood true essence, and Yang Chun seemed to have expanded a lot in this environment. Soon, Yang Chun was keenly aware that someone was staring at this place, and it was with hostility. With Yang Chun's sensitivity to the murderous aura, the guy staring at him was by no means a long time ago, but just stared at him. It must be that when Yang Chun Dan was condensed, Dan Master True Essence stage, Yang True King, it Chun found. Mountain. By Yang Realm Master. Chun, Emperor of the Wood, he, Dan Yang, Stage Master, Chun Realm. The city was jointly managed by two masters of the Deshang stage monster race. This city, to put it bluntly, was an Immortal's cave, which could also be collected by the powerful. The Immortal's cave left by an ascended guy. Without the right technique, it could never be collected. There was only one end for forcibly collecting it. That was, the jade and stone would be destroyed together. The reason why Yang Chun was so sure was because of the first wood true essence spiritual solution lake under his feet. In fact, with so much first wood true essence spiritual solution accumulated here, as long as he was not careful when collecting it, the city above would be directly blown to ashes by the outbreak of the first wood true essence. If the Immortal's cave had been collected, so much first wood true essence spiritual solution, it was simply a treasure for cultivation. How could it be left to Yang Chun so easily? If the real Immortal's cave had been collected, so much first wood true essence spiritual solution, it was simply the treasure cultivation. How could it be so easily left to Yang Chun? It was not a fun thing to be stared at by one or two masters of the Deshang realm with hostility. It was not a fun thing to be stared at by one or two masters of the Deshang realm with hostility. The first wood true essence spiritual solution lake under Yang Chun's feet suddenly began to ripple. The originally very stable lake surface seemed to be stirred by a big hand. The liquid surface was tumbling all the way, and it seemed that something was about to surge up. "Boo!" Yang Chun shouted, but his figure did not move. "Little friend, don't panic." An unfamiliar voice suddenly rang out, but did not have any pressure or imposing aura at all. It sounded like an ordinary old man, and it gave people a lot of confidence. "We don't have any ill intentions. A thought immediately flashed in Yang Chun's mind. There was more than one master. It seemed that only the two masters of the Deshang realm who managed the city could appear and make a sound here. The first wood true essence spiritual solution under Yang Chun's feet was boiling more and more, showing an extremely unstable state. It seemed that the next moment, the huge first wood true essence spiritual solution lake would suddenly erupt. Two masters of the Deshang realm, their spiritual awareness appeared here. To say that they did not covet this first wood true essence spiritual solution, Yang Chun would never believe it. Don't get me wrong. Yang Chun's reaction made the two city masters of the Deshang realm panic for a while. Once Yang Chun noticed that something was wrong and detonated the entire first wood true essence spiritual solution lake, maybe the two masters of the Deshang realm could still survive, but the hundreds of thousands of monster cultivators in the entire city would be directly wiped out, leaving nothing behind. It was another city master of the Deshang realm who spoke urgently. At this time, they could not covet these first wood true essence spiritual solutions. It was more important to appease Yang Chun. "We have no malicious intent." The later city master quickly said, "We just found the atmosphere here abnormal, so we came to check it out. There's no other meaning. This is your opportunity. We will never interfere." Opportunity? Yang Chun suddenly sneered. If I didn't have a magic weapon that could restrain this first wood true essence spiritual solution, this would be my burial place. We know that you were forced to come in. Those who chased you, we will give you a thorough explanation. The previous city master listened to the resentful voice of Yang Chun and said directly, "Explanation?" Yang Chun still had that disdainful voice. "What explanation? How do you explain it?" "Wait a moment." The first city master directly dropped a sentence, and then there was no sound. However, Yang Chun did not dare to relax at all. Under the spying of the two masters of the Deshang realm, Yang Chun had to maintain absolute caution. At the same time, he was also guessing in his heart, what were the thoughts of these two city masters? So much first would true essence spiritual solution, they actually watched it, which could only explain one thing. They did not have the ability to collect it, and at the same time, they were also afraid that a strong collection would cause an explosion. This was the bargaining capital of Yang Chun now. While thinking, the time had not even passed the time for a stick of incense. There was a chaotic sound above his head. Yang Chun looked up subconsciously and saw a few figures falling from the liquid above like dumplings, directly falling into the first with true essence spiritual solution lake. Chapter 604. These figures were very familiar. They were clearly the leopard monsters who chased Yang Chun before he jumped into the pool. 3 Yuanying stage, 1 Jidan stage. They directly dealt with Yang Chun that day. However, they did not have the ability of Yang Chun to be able to move freely in the first with true essence. As soon as the figure fell into the first with true essence lake, it made a shrill scream. After a few screams, the first with true essence invaded their bodies, and they could no longer bear it and directly exploded. The flesh and blood of the 4 leopard monsters quickly turned into dust that could no longer be seen. The voice of the first city lord, who had just spoken, came again. "Little friend, are you satisfied with this explanation?" He did not move, and the guy who chased him was thrown into ashes by the city lord in front of him. If Yang Chun said that he was not satisfied, it would be a bit too much. Satisfied? Yang Chun's face was instantly full of smiles. "I am very satisfied." "It's good that you are satisfied." The voice of the first city lord came again. "I don't know what instructions the city lord has." Yang Chun's voice eased a lot this time, but the first with true essence lake under his feet was still in the kind of posture, and he did not dare to relax a bit. "Instructions?" "No." The first city lord also seemed to know that it was impossible to gain the trust of Yang Chun at this time, and directly replied, "There is no instruction. You can cultivate here at will. Here is the first with true essence spiritual solution. You can absorb as much as you want. If you can absorb it all, it is also your ability. When you feel that it is enough, you can come out." "Can I absorb it all?" Yang Chun immediately realized something from the words of the first city lord and asked loudly, "You can absorb it as you wish." The voice of the second city lord came from the other side. "Your opportunity, you grasp it yourself. Take care of yourself." After that, the two city lords no longer spoke. It seemed that they were no longer here. However, Yang Chun knew that they had definitely been monitoring this place. From the attitude of the two, Yang Chun guessed that this first with true essence spiritual solution lake should have caused a lot of trouble for them. Sometimes, delicious food wasn't just food. When it exceeded a certain amount, it could even cause a person to choke to death. Similarly, the same was true for the first with true essence spiritual solution. Perhaps at the beginning, these first wood true essences were the most wonderful tonic for the city, but when the amount of first wood true essence spiritual solution exceeded a certain amount, it would be a disaster for the entire city. Now the entire city was located on this huge first wood true essence spiritual solution lake. Once the first wood true essence spiritual solution exploded, the entire city would turn into flying ash. It could be said that this city in the tree was in danger of exploding at any time. As the city lord, the two Deshang stage monster cultivators could do nothing about it. It's not that they didn't think of a way, but even if it was the wood attribute monster race with the highest cultivation base, even a tree monster in the late Yuanying stage, when they entered here, it was inevitable that the first would true essence spiritual solution would enter their body and explode, not to mention the little guys of other attributes. In this regard, the two city lords have been at a loss, but they could not easily move the formation here. They could only struggle to maintain it in the city. The movement of Yang Chen's condensing Dan alarmed them. they suddenly discovered that someone could completely ignore these first wood true essence spiritual solution and could even absorb it, which suddenly gave them hope. Especially when Yang Chan said that he had a magic weapon that could restrain the first wood true essence spiritual solution. The two almost coincidentally began to think crookedly. If this magic weapon was in their hands, wouldn't they not have to worry about the disaster of these first wood true essence spiritual solution? However, Yang Chun was too careful. As soon as he discovered their aura, he immediately controlled the first wood true essence spiritual solution to the edge of the outbreak. As long as he thought about it, everything here would be wiped out with Yang Chun. This kind of behavior that would rather be a broken jade than a disorderly tile directly suppressed the two city lords, and they did not dare to act rashly. Of course, they soon knew how Yang Chun came in. After all, the movement that night was not small, and many people saw it. In order to calm Yang Chen's anger and comfort Yang Chun, the two did not hesitate to sacrifice the 3 leopard monsters in the Yuanying stage, and at the same time, the guy in the Jidon stage. Compared with solving the disaster of the first would true essence spiritual solution lake, what were a few little guys in the Yuanying stage? Dealing with them, not only could they stabilize Yang Chun, but they could also bring a good reputation to the city lords. Why not? Yang Chun was quiet again, but Yang Chen knew that the two city lords must be staring at this place all the time and would not relax at all. Yang Chun did not care and continued to sit above the first wood flying sword, silently absorbing the first wood true essence spiritual solution. There was too much first wood true essence spiritual solution. Even if Yang Chen's cultivation base after the Jidon stage, the absorption of the first wood true essence spiritual solution was only a drop in the bucket for such a large and deep first wood true essence spiritual solution lake. The city lord let Yang Chun absorb it at will, and Yang Chen certainly would not let go of such an opportunity. However, even if he was allowed to absorb it, how much could he absorb? Suddenly, a thought appeared in Yang Chen's mind. Since this first wood true essence spiritual solution has now condensed into a liquid, then the wine gourd could hold any liquid. Could it also hold this first wood true essence spiritual solution? Holding the gourd in his hand, Yang Chun began to hesitate. After all, in this gourd, there was a lake of the 4 seas mysterious coral liquid and a lake of the distiller's yeast. For Yang Chun, it could be said to be a precious thing. If he was not careful and damaged the gourd, it would not be worth the loss. Fortunately, this did not prevent Yang Chun from experimenting with a little first wood true essence spiritual solution. As long as the amount could be controlled, then the absorption should be very safe. Carefully holding the gourd, Yang Chen's consciousness instantly immersed in the gourd and began to control the gourd to carefully collect a little first wood true essence spiritual solution. Whoosh, a green shadow flew directly out of the first wood true essence spiritual solution lake and flew into the gourd. What surprised Yang Chun was that the gourd did not have a castle, and the first wood true essence spiritual solution was still the first wood true essence spiritual solution, and it did not explode. This fully explained that Yang Chun could easily collect these first wood true essence spiritual solutions. With this understanding, Yang Chun did not rest and directly began to control the gourd to absorb the first wood true essence spiritual solution. A green water chain began to be produced from the first wood true essence spiritual solution lake and quickly flew towards the mouth of the gourd. This time, the speed of absorption was more than doubled. In a short period of time, the first wood true essence spiritual solution absorbed by the gourd had reduced the height of the lake by more than an inch. In the gourd, another place opened up a new deep pit. In the deep pit, it was completely filled with this dark green first wood true essence spiritual solution, but there was no explosive instability. Seeing this scene, Yang Chen's face showed a smile again. Such a large first wood true essence spiritual solution lake is finally my own. Chapter 605. After the addition of the gourd, the speed of collecting the first wood true essence spiritual solution was several times faster. Although the huge spiritual solution lake was hundreds of feet deep, under the control of Yang Chun, The gourd could collect the first would true essence spiritual solution with a depth of 10 feet in one day. This kind of good thing could only be found in the gourd, and Yang Chun could use it anytime, anywhere. Chunyang Palace also had the old tree demon, and then he would see the little monstrous talent Mu Bo, plus the wood attribute Sun Qingxue. These would be precious gifts in the future. However, in the process of collecting, Yang Chun did not dare to relax his vigilance at all, and always kept the first would true essence spiritual solution on the edge of the outbreak. The two to Shang stage city lords, who could guarantee that they would not be tempted. Once they wanted to grab the gourd in Yang Chen's hands, Yang Chun could detonate it at any time. This was also a deterrent. Even if the first would true essence spiritual solution had no use for the two, this gourd could collect the first would true essence spiritual solution so that the city would no longer have any worries. In any case, the two guys would not let Yang Chen leave like this. The 100 feet deep first would true essence spiritual solution lake. Yang Chun collected it for more than 100 days, nearly 5 months. Seeing the deep first would true essence spiritual solution lake reduced inch by inch, and now there was only a depth of less than a few feet. While the gourd collected the first would true essence spiritual solution, the medicine garden did not stop collecting the first would true essence. The Punlai divine wood, under the irrigation of the first would true essence, changed almost every day. In terms of absorbing the first would true essence, the Punlai divine wood had almost no limit. Every day, the Punlai divine wood grew taller and thicker, and the aura emitted was getting closer and closer to the purest first would true essence. The Punlai divine wood was the closest to the origin of the first wood. This irrigation with the first wood true essence spiritual solution was simply the best catalyst. In just over half a year, even the worst Punlai divine wood was more robust than the one that Yang Chun used to refine the first wood flying sword. The door in the bottle also became more and more solid, as if it would soon take shape. Of course, the first wood flying sword, which served as a medium, had also undergone tremendous changes. However, the change in the flying sword was mainly in its aura, not its shape. Whether it was Yang Chen's condensing Dan or the absorption of the first wood true essence spiritual solution in the medicine garden, they all needed the first wood flying sword as a medium. After such a long time of being washed by the liquid first wood true essence spiritual solution, even if no other materials were added to the first wood flying sword, it was already a pure first wood flying sword. The first wood golden Dan in Yang Chen's dantian was not idle these days, and was still madly absorbing the first wood true essence. This was much faster than Yang Chen refining a small bottle of 5th earth true essence, 10th water true essence, and 7th metal true essence, and using the 5th earth true secret art, 10th water true secret art, and 7th metal true secret art to continuously enhance these spiritual powers. In just 5 months, Yang Chen's first wood golden Dan had once again expanded a big circle, and the level of spiritual power was close to the peak of the early Jidan stage. It seemed that he would soon enter the middle Jidan stage. However, Yang Chun did not become complacent because of this. Although these spiritual powers were pure first wood true essence, they were not cultivated by himself after all. There was a natural lack of tacit understanding with himself. Only by constantly consolidating could he completely turn these spiritual powers into his own use. Seeing that all the first would true essence spiritual solution here would be absorbed by Yang Chun, Yang Chun also began to ponder how to leave safely. With so much first would true essence spiritual solution, the two city lords would never be happy to watch Yang Chun take it away. In particular, Yang Chen's gourd could collect the first would true essence spiritual solution, which could solve the hidden dangers of the city forever. So Yang Chun could not easily leave. It was only because Yang Chun was now holding the first would true essence spiritual solution that could explode at any time, and the two city lords were so tolerant of him. On the one hand, it could be regarded as a temporary solution to the hidden dangers of the entire city. On the other hand, it was not waiting for the moment when Yang Chun relaxed his vigilance. At the moment when all the first wood, true essence spiritual solution was collected by the gourd, Yang Chun received the gourd into the merit ring. In this world, even if someone killed Yang Chun, it was impossible to get the gourd from the merit ring. However, on Yang Chun's body, there was still an aura of the first wood, true essence spiritual solution that was about to erupt. This kind of aura, Yang Chun's own spiritual power could already be simulated. Without the first wood, true essence spiritual solution, there was a huge empty space around, and a trace of the first wood, true essence spiritual solution came from all directions. Yang Chun understood that this must be the place where the immortal who was beheaded left to collect the first wood, true essence. Just because it had been too long, too much first wood, true essence had accumulated here and turned into a spiritual solution, so there would be such a change. Yang Chun estimated that the city was discovered by the later monster race too late, so such a situation would happen. In the future, as long as someone could collect the gathered first wood true essence in time and prevent the first wood true essence from gathering too much, all the problems would be solved. There was no light here. Yang Chun's spiritual awareness explored it, and there was nothing else worthy of Yang Chun's action. He put away the first wood flying sword, and then flew directly into the strange liquid. In the liquid, Yang Chun's spiritual awareness could not explore very far, but Yang Chun believed that even the spiritual awareness of the city lord could not pass through this liquid. Yang Chun was hesitating whether he should also collect some of these things. But after thinking about it, he finally chose to give up. All the arrangements here were left by the immortal who was beheaded. Yang Chun had already received the first wood true essence spiritual solution left by him, and had already accepted the reward of the immortal. If he forcibly collected these liquids, once the entire city was affected, this immortal's cave might be destroyed. This kind of practice of doing things without leaving room was not Yang Chun's style. Even if he left a place for the monster race to develop and multiply, Yang Chun was not afraid. Tao, devil, and monster race were all cultivators between heaven and earth, and they were indispensable. Since even the heavenly court left a place for the monster race, Yang Chun would not even have this heart. All the way up, the force that could follow the spiritual awareness and pull people down was long gone. Yang Chun rose smoothly and entered the pool at the beginning. Rising along the pool again, soon Yang Chun came out of the water. However, as soon as he came out of the water, Yang Chun saw two old men, one on the left and one on the right, standing on both sides of the pool, smiling at Yang Chun. At this time, Yang Chun was not afraid of any spiritual awareness being attracted and directly released his spiritual awareness to explore the surrounding movements. However, under this exploration, Yang Chun was surprised. Within the scope of Yang Chun's spiritual awareness exploration, apart from the two old men in front of him, there was only a large group of Yuanying stage monster race masters in the distance, and there was no one else. Chapter 606. The speed of the shuttle driven by Yang Chun was so fast that even Luo Yuan, who was in the late Deshang stage, could not catch up. That was still when Yang Chun was in the foundation stage. Now Yang Chun had 3 Jidan realms, and his cultivation base was much stronger than before. The speed of the shuttle was almost 50% faster. But what Yang Chun did not expect was that when the second city master showed his true form, the speed was even faster than the shuttle. The huge wings flapped a few times, and suddenly the distance between the two began to decrease rapidly. Fortunately, Yang Chun was talking to those people at the edge of his own spiritual awareness, and he got up early, at least 100 miles ahead of the second city master. Even if the speed of the second city master was fast, he could not catch up in a short time. At this time, Yang Chun suddenly felt that he was a bit arrogant. In his previous life in the heavenly court, there were also a few bird-type monster races, which were characterized by their speed. Because of the speed of the shuttle, Yang Chun had not even put the masters of the Deshang stage in his eyes. When the second city master caught up, Yang Chun was aware of the crisis. If he couldn't escape this time, he could only use the immortal beheading blade. However, if Yang Chun destroyed the immortal beheading blade like this, Yang Chun was still unwilling, so the first choice was still to run away. His spiritual power was pushed to the extreme. Yang Chun raised the speed of the shuttle to the highest level, frantically escaping while making plans. There was only one threat here, the second city master. If he could be solved, then he wouldn't have to worry about anything. This time, Yang Chun did not make the posture of detonating the first with true essence spiritual solution. When they were in the cave, they were worried that the Immortal's cave would be destroyed. It could also be said that they were afraid to take risks. But outside, even if Yang Chun detonated the first with true essence spiritual solution, he could only hurt himself. For the second city master, who flew faster than himself, it would hardly cause any harm. The two of them chased each other like this, and the distance of 100 miles was now constantly shrinking. In less than 10 days, the distance between the two of them was less than 50 kilometers. Although the second city lord was getting closer and closer, the surprise in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. The little calf in front, how many magic weapons did it have? Not only could it collect the first with spiritual solution, but it also had such a powerful flying magic weapon. When this situation fell into his eyes, the first reaction of the second city lord was that Yang Chun did not know where he inherited an ancient immortal's cave. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have so many powerful magic weapons. At the thought of this, the heart of the second city lord also became hot. If he could take the magic weapon on Yang Chun's body for himself, wouldn't he make a lot of money? Once this thought popped up, it could no longer be suppressed. The second city lord thought more. If he chased too fast and caught up with Yang Chun in the 10,000 trees forest, wouldn't a lot of things fall into the eyes of some people? After all, it was not good, and it would make his plan to swallow it alone fall through. The second city lord would not believe that Yang Chun only had the gourd and the flying magic weapon. Even if these two were added to the first city lord, it was reasonable for the second city lord to take a big part of the remaining things. Thinking of this, the speed of the second city lord slowed down a little, keeping a little faster than Yang Chun. But before Yang Chun flew out of the 10,000 trees forest, it was absolutely impossible to catch up with him. He leisurely followed behind Yang Chun, slowly chasing. Yang Chun was just a junior in the Jedon stage. When he was in the Immortal's cave, he could rely on the detonation of the first with true essence to threaten the two city lords. After coming out, naturally, there was no reliance. Everything was decided by the second city lord. This chase and escape lasted for a month. Seeing that Yang Chun had already seen the edge of the 10,000 trees forest, he suddenly heard the voice of the second city lord. "Kid, you have run for so long. This old man has given you enough face. Why don't you give up? Let's catch up and talk about it, senior." Yang Chun replied directly without thinking, and then continued to fly quickly. However, the other party gave Yang Chun the opportunity to fly out of the 10,000 trees forest. For Yang Chun, that was good news. In addition to the shuttle's ability to fly and escape through water, the earth escape was also very good. The wood attribute in the 10,000 trees forest was too strong, and the wood restrained the earth. Even if Yang Chun wanted to escape through the earth, he had to consider the risks. What's more, there was an array to collect the first with true essence under the forest. Yang Chun did not dare to take the risk of escaping through the earth. But out of the 10,000 trees forest, Yang Chun would not care about this. No matter how fast the second city lord flew, could he escape through the earth faster than the shuttle? As soon as he left the 10,000 trees forest, the shuttle controlled by Yang Chun was much lower. It was almost flying on the ground. The second city lord was just hanging not too far away. He did not know what he was thinking in his heart. Suddenly, Yang Chun paused, his body suspended in the air. Facing the rear, he rushed to the second city lord more than 30 miles away and cupped his hands again. "Thank you for the city lord's personal escort. This younger generation junior will leave." As soon as the voice fell, the shuttle, under the control of Yang Chun, drilled vertically into the ground from top to bottom. Looking from afar, it was like a seabird that had already found its prey and flew down from the air to catch fish. In an instant, the second city lord understood Yang Chun's plan and suddenly became furious. With a flap of his huge wings, his figure suddenly accelerated and rushed towards Yang Chun. While flying, the second City Lord's monster soul blazed and directly nailed a monster soul mark on Yang Chen's body. Even if Yang Chen went to the sky or into the earth, it was impossible to escape the tracking of his monster soul. This was not all. The moment Yang Chen's figure entered the ground, the second City Lord's condensed monster soul had directly blasted into Yang Chen's mind. This kind of monster soul attack had the same wonderful effect as Luo Yuan's soul attack, but it was not the kind of condensation of Luo Yuan's, but it was gathered into a group. However, when the attack power was the most powerful, it was the moment when the condensed monster soul exploded. With a bang, the monster soul controlled by the second City Lord directly exploded in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. There was a loud noise in his sea of consciousness, but Yang Chen did not seem to feel it. His current sea of consciousness was so strong that even in his previous life in the spiritual world, it was not so stable. Not to mention the explosion of the monster soul controlled by the second City Lord of the Dashang stage. Even if it was the ascending blue shadow, it was impossible to hurt Yang Chen at this moment with the monster soul. The figure escaped into the ground almost unaffected, and the second City Lord arrived after a few breaths. Feeling that the monster soul mark he planted was getting deeper and deeper, the second City Lord almost flew into a rage. He was a monster race flying in the air. Although he had the ability to escape into the ground, it was impossible for him to move freely like Yang Chen underground. He could only follow the monster soul mark on Yang Chen's body and track it bit by bit. Chapter 607. Yang Chen drove the shuttle all the way down, straight into the depth of thousands of feet, and then stopped. At this depth, even the monster soul mark of the second city master became vague. As long as Yang Chen went down a certain distance, even if the second city master was a master of the Dashang stage, he could not detect the position of Yang Chen deep underground, unless he also followed into the ground, and the distance was closer. However, entering the underground, the second city master could not guarantee that his speed could still keep up with Yang Chen. He could only watch Yang Chen stop at the edge of his spiritual awareness exploration, as if to provoke him. Second City Master, I am indebted to you again. This younger generation junior is very grateful. Yang Chen's voice sounded directly in the mind of the second City Master, but it was clearly transmitted through his own monster soul mark. Want to go? Wishful thinking. As soon as the second City Master heard the voice of Yang Chen, he realized that Yang Chen actually relied on his own monster soul mark to talk to himself, and suddenly his waist straightened up a little. As long as there was this monster soul mark, even if Yang Chen escaped thousands of miles away, the second city master could also perceive his direction. Unless Yang Chen stayed underground and became a mouse, as long as he came out, he would face the pursuit of the second city master. Senior, this younger generation junior, and the original owner of the Immortal's cave have a lot of history. I can't bear to break his inheritance. The voice of Yang Chen in the mind of the second city master suddenly became fierce. Senior, you turn around now. This younger generation junior will think that nothing has happened. Ignorant junior, boasting shamelessly. The second city master was furious. Yang Chen's words were clearly a threat to let him turn back. However, with the second city master's Dashang stage cultivation base, in the Immortal's cave, except for the first city master, it was simply the first city master. Even the first city master had to discuss things with him as much as possible. After so many years, how could the second city master accept Yang Chen's attitude? Now the second city master could not wait to catch Yang Chen and directly dismember him to vent his anger. Boom! A shuddering aura came through his own monster soul mark, which carried the momentum. It was simply unheard of by the second city master. Even the second city master of the Dashang stage felt shuddering. This was the aura of a master of the peak Dashang stage, and it was still the aura of a monster race predecessor. The first reaction of the second city master was this, but he soon realized that something was wrong. The first reaction of the second city master was this: Yang Chen, the younger generation junior of the Jedon stage. It was impossible to have this kind of aura. It was impossible for a small Jiadan stage junior like Yang Chun to have this kind of aura. Moreover, if Yang Chun was a master who had passed the wind tribulation, he should have ascended long ago. How could he stay in a mortal world? This was the crystallization of the demon power of the monster soul of the first city master. The second city master had reached the peak of the early stage, only one step away from entering the realm of the middle Deshang stage. If there was this demon power crystal in his hand, then it was entirely possible for the second city master to slowly refine this demon power crystal. At that time, not to mention the middle Deshang stage, even if it was the peak Deshang stage, it would still be easy. In an instant, the heart of the second city master burned again. Yang Chun in the underground was really something. He said that he had a relationship with the original owner of the Immortal's Cave. Maybe he was the descendant of the original owner of the Immortal's Cave. As long as he killed Yang Chun, wouldn't the things that were passed down in his hands be his own? Originally, Yang Chun's intention was to use this demon power crystal to let the second city master retreat, but he did not expect it to directly provoke the greed of the second city master. Hand over the demon power crystal, hand over the gourd that you used to collect the first with spiritual solution, and I will spare your life. The threat of the second city master was directly passed to Yang Chen's consciousness through the monster soul mark. If you dare to be stubborn again, I will kill you. Yang Chen was silent this time, and the second city master could not detect any movement of Yang Chen for a long time. However, the monster soul mark showed that Yang Chen was still in the same place and did not leave. He didn't know what he was doing in the same place. The second city master was patient and was ready. Originally, he was chasing Yang Chun, and there was still a little face problem, but now it was a naked interest. Not for anything else. Even if it was only for the demon power crystal, the second city master had to come up with his trump card. The Earth Escape could not catch up with Yang Chun. Couldn't the second city master use other tricks? The second city master's whole body shook, and hundreds of feathers flew out of his body, flying around. In just a moment, those feathers fell to the ground, and the feather handles were inserted into the ground without exception. Every falling feather had a corresponding position. The second city master waited for the feathers to fall to the ground, and the monster power was stimulated. Suddenly, those feathers formed a large array, surrounding the land of hundreds of feet. Suppress. The second city master shouted loudly in his mouth, and the huge monster power suddenly went down along the feathers, surrounding the place covered by the array. Within the scope of the array, all the land became harder than steel. Not to mention the Earth Escape, it was already lucky to be able to survive inside. A pair of sharp claws stretched out in the air and grabbed towards the ground. Boom! Like a giant hand that could split open a mountain, the ground that was several dozen zhang deep was directly grabbed up and thrown far away. In a few consecutive times, the second city master had already dug down to a depth of hundreds of feet. With a few more times, Yang Chun will be dug out by the second city master. There's a road to heaven. You don't go. There is no door to hell to break in. The movement of the second city master completely angered Yang Chun. Originally, Yang Chun also felt that it was a bit too much to take the first with spiritual solution of others, but the second city master was so greedy, so he could not blame Yang Chun. There is no injustice. There is no debt. You and I have no grievances in the past. Senior, you want to take the life of this younger generation junior again and again. This younger generation junior can only help you. Yang Chen's voice once again passed into the mind of the second city master through the monster soul mark. The second city master simply turned a deaf ear to Yang Chen's words. Seeing that he could get the monster power crystal of an ascended master, how could he still care about it? His claws accelerated and dug towards the ground. Just when he felt that he was less than 20 feet away from Yang Chun, the second city master suddenly noticed that his monster soul mark seemed to be led by something and thrown into another place. Suddenly, a crazy killing intent directly rushed into the mind of the second city master. The kind of killing intent that carried supreme majesty and could not be blasphemed instantly broke through the sea of consciousness of the second city master. The second city master, who was still looking forward to getting the monster power crystal of the ascended predecessor, ate this killing intent, and suddenly his sea of consciousness was shaken, and his mind was in chaos. In the boundless fear, the second city master fell into a deep pit, unconscious, and could no longer move. Chapter 608. Yang Chen's figure slowly drilled from the hard ground. It had to be said that the second city master still had a set. This set of feathers just happened to restrain the earth escape. The only drawback was that the speed of starting was slow. If the speed of the earth escape was a little faster, it could not be trapped. Just now, Yang Chen had been in the same place, but it also gave the second city master a chance. Otherwise, the second city master would not be so sure to start. However, it was too late to say anything at this moment, since Yang Chen decided to start and shouted that there was no injustice, there was no room for reconciliation. In the face of a comatose second city master, even if he was a master of the Deshang stage, Yang Chen also had a way to make him die without knowing why. Of course, Yang Chen did not simply cut off his head with a sword, but used a relatively gentle way. The reason why he did not destroy the body of the second city master was still for the consideration of his master Gao Yu. A Deshang stage monster core and a complete monster beast corpse, for any cultivator, was also a precious puppet material. Although Gao Yu already had a praying mantis beside her, Yang Chen did not mind having another Deshang stage puppet. In particular, the second city master, this guy's body was a goshawk, and his flying speed was so fast that even Yang Chen's current shuttle couldn't match it. Once his master encountered any danger, it was also a fortunate thing to be able to escape in time. If people knew that the reason why Yang Chen left the complete body of the second city master was to find a puppet tool for Gao Yu to escape, it was not known how many people would beat their chests and stomp their feet. It was not a reckless waste of natural resources in such a way. That was a master of the Deshang stage. Speaking of it, perhaps the second city master was the calmest one to die. There was no struggle, no pain, even no feeling. He lost his life in a coma. However, if the second city master had a choice, he would never choose such a stupid way to die. Perhaps he regretted it at the moment before he passed out, or maybe not. Who knows? The body of the second city master was directly put into the pure bottle medicine garden. The hundreds of feathers he distributed around lost the support of the second city master's monster power and became ordinary feathers. However, every feather was as tough as steel, yet it was light and maintained the characteristics of feathers. Yang Chen didn't say anything and put these things away. The feathers of the Deshang stage monster, and it seemed that it had been refined by the second city lord. It was definitely a rare good thing for refining a set of formation flags. Senior sister studies formations, so she'll definitely like it. As the city lord, and having controlled the Immortal's cave for many years, the second city lord definitely had countless good things on him. Yang Chen took the Chinquin bag of the second city lord as his own. Because of the actions of the second city master, the terrain had changed greatly. Yang Chen certainly would not stay here for a long time. After a few hasty cleaning up, he drove the shuttle and quickly left the place, flying further north into the ice and snow. Using the inverted sea jasper cup to shield the exploration of spiritual awareness. After a few days of driving the shuttle out at high speed, Yang Chen began to open the Chinquin bag of the second city lord and check the harvest inside. In the eyes was a hill of spirit stones. There were all kinds of grades, low grade, middle grade, and high grade, directly piled up into 3 hills. For so many years, all the things in the Immortal's cave had to be purchased and rented with a large number of spirit stones. The net worth of the second city lord made Yang Chen a little jealous. Although there were many spirit stones, it was not enough to make Yang Chen lose his sense of proportion. However, what surprised Yang Chen the most was the dozens of top-grade spirit stones. Each piece of spirit stone had a weight of several jin, which was much heavier than the top-grade spirit stone that Yang Chen got from the old land. When he was chased by Luo Yuan, Yang Chen's top-grade spirit stone had been consumed 5 in 10 years. After giving 2 to his senior sister Gong Sunling, there were only 2 left. Good steel should be used on the edge of the blade. Sometimes, when it was not so critical, Yang Chun would even use some top-grade spirit stones to replace the top-grade spirit stones as the source of spiritual power for the shuttle, in order to save the top-grade spirit stones and save them for use in case of emergency. Now that there were dozens of top-grade spirit stones in hand, Yang Chun no longer had to worry about the source of spiritual power for the shuttle in the future. It could be used openly. Not to mention the top-grade spirit stones, the value of other grades of spirit stones obtained was estimated to be more than 1,000 gene of top-grade spirit stones. But according to the calculation of spirit stones, the entire Chunyang Palace added up was not as many as the Second City Lord Spirit Stones. It could be said that Yang Chun was now one of the rare, super-rich people in the mortal world. Yang Chun couldn't help but think that even the Second City Lord had such a rich net worth. Wouldn't the wealth of the First City Lord be even richer? Of course, this thought was only a flash. Even if the origin of the Demon Dao was different and the ideas were different, Yang Chun had not yet reached the point of robbing others. There were treasures in the world that others did not know waiting for Yang Chun to get. Yang Chun would not do such a thing. No matter who got such a large number of spirit stones, the mood would not be too bad. The same was true for Yang Chun. He put away the spirit stones happily and kept them for the day when he would buy some needed materials or cultivation. Next, Yang Chun began to check other gains. It had to be said that the city lord who controlled hundreds of thousands of monster race cultivators was indeed rich to the extreme. Hundreds of thousands of monster race cultivators for the sake of spirit stones. Almost all the good things on the monster plane were plundered and sent to him. All kinds of rare materials, just like garbage, were randomly piled up in a corner of the Chinquin bag, forming a dense hill that was almost pressed. No one had sorted them out for a long time, and these materials had been messily mixed together. For a while, it was even impossible to count what was there. Just a few glances, Yang Chun saw several top-level refining materials, among which there were many fire-attributed materials that Yang Chun needed. Yang Chun must keep the bright ray sword, but relatively speaking, the materials used were not particularly high-level, resulting in the flying sword's grade not too high. With these things, plus the high-level flying sword that he had grabbed from someone before, it was enough to raise the level of the bright ray sword to the same level as Elder Ming's Earth Attribute flying sword. The materials of the other elements were also available. At least Yang Chun believed that as long as he found the main materials of various attributes of the flying sword, then his own Great Yin Yang 5 Elements flying sword did not need to prepare any auxiliary materials at all, and now he had enough on hand. However, these were not the most surprising things for Yang Chun. When Yang Chun saw the jade slips neatly arranged in the 8 big boxes in the Chinquin bag, his eyes almost stretched out his hands. Chapter 609. 8 boxes. Each box contained at least 1,000 pieces of jade slips. Yang Chun picked up a piece, and after the exploration of his spiritual awareness, he was surprised to find that in this piece of jade slips, it actually recorded the cultivation method of a certain race of monsters from the beginning to the advancement to the top level. A piece of jade slip was the cultivation method of a monster race. There were at least 8,000 pieces here. Could it be that there were more than 8,000 monster race cultivation methods of more than 8,000 races? In each box, Yang Chun took a few pieces and looked at it. Only then did he find that there were 6 boxes containing similar things. In other words, there were at least more than 6,000 monster race cultivation methods. Among the other 2 boxes, one box contained the refining method of the monster race. The refining method of the monster race was different from that of the cultivators. The cultivators used various materials to refine. Most of the time, the materials of the monster race were only auxiliary. What they really needed to refine was some parts of their bodies. Shikue and Xiesha refined their own poisonous fangs and big pincer tail stings into their own magic weapons, and the old tree demon was his own branches. Different monster races had different refining methods. Although Yang Chun had contacted a lot of monster race colleagues in the spiritual world and immortal world, he also remembered some advanced refining methods. But like this systematic refining method for different monsters of different races, Yang Chun was definitely not so comprehensive, and there was no such a system from low to high step by step. In the remaining box, there were some refining methods of medicinal pills commonly used by the monster race. The medicinal pills taken by the monster race were different from those taken by the cultivators. In addition to the precious medicinal materials, they could also use a variety of monster cores and devil chi to make medicine. Even the Jiedan and Yuanying of human cultivators could be used as a tonic for the monster race. Although this refining method was rebellious in the eyes of human cultivators, in the eyes of the monster race, it was as natural as the human cultivators using monster cores to make medicine. All kinds of methods were interlinked. It depended on which side the buttocks were sitting on and from which side to speak. Yang Chun, as a former great principal golden immortal, of course, would not find this method unacceptable. On the contrary, a true alchemist would not only refine elixirs for human cultivators. Although Yang Chun already had the top elderly lord alchemy scripture, which already recorded the highest level of alchemy techniques, the alchemy techniques and pill recipes of the demon race were definitely excellent references and collections for Yang Chun. Sometimes, Yang Chun might even be able to combine the strengths of the two to refine a brand new medicinal pill. From this point alone, among the alchemy experts in Yang Chun's previous life's memories, only Taishang Laojun seemed to have such a realm. The others all had their own limitations. Just these 8 boxes of jade slips, in addition to the knowledge of Yang Chun's previous life, were enough to make Yang Chun a master in the cultivation of demonic beasts. Not to mention Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. Even if it was a ruthless character like the Old Tree Demon and Lan Ning, Yang Chun could still guide them. If these things were brought back to Chunyang Palace could almost immediately be open to the outside world to absorb the disciples of the Hall of Eccentrics. From then on, it would become a monster race cultivation holy land that could compete with the Immortal's Cave in the 10,000 Trees Forest. Not only that, because of the combination of Yang Chun's knowledge and the cultivation experience of the cultivators, in some ways, Chunyang Palace could even surpass Banyan Tree City. This was of great significance for the development of Chunyang Palace. Even if it was not realistic to openly recruit monster race disciples for the time being, at least the dozens of masters in the Hall of Eccentrics in Chunyang Palace already had a systematic cultivation method. If they could accept a Deshang stage monster to join the Hall of Eccentrics, the strength of Chunyang Palace would more than double out of thin air. Anyway, now there have been sect of eccentrics that have begun to set up the Hall of Eccentrics. Even the Taishamen were no exception. At that time, as long as there was a suitable opportunity, Chunyang Palace could become the most expected sect of the monster race, and its future development and growth would not be a problem. To put it bluntly, these jade slips were the inheritance of the monster race. Yang Chun was not sure if the second city lord had all the things here. Maybe the first city lord still had them, but this did not prevent Yang Chun from getting most of the monster race's cultivation inheritance. After collecting these jade slips, Yang Chun continued to rummage through the things in this Chinquan bag. A lot of magic weapons, good and bad. He didn't know where the second city lord got them. These magic weapons, the good ones could be left by Yang Chun to the disciples of Chunyang Palace, and the bad ones could be sold for spirit stones, which was always a small fortune. However, after packing up so many things, Yang Chun did not see a single spirit medicine. It must be known that whether it was a demon or monster race, they all needed spirit medicine. Since the second city lord had so many high-level materials and spirit stones, it was obviously very abnormal that there were no spirit medicines. Even if the second city lord was a master of the Deshang stage, it was impossible for him to eat all the spirit medicines in his hands. It must be known that there were still alchemy methods on those jade slips, even if the spirit medicine was good. After all, eating it directly was not as good as refining it into a medicinal pill. The second city lord should not be unaware of this truth. The only possibility was that the second city lord had a medicine garden space, and all the spirit medicines were collected in the medicine garden space. Yang Chun's gaze began to search around for things that might be in the medicine garden. There were too many magic weapons here, and Yang Chun had to screen them one by one. The second city lord was dead, and all the spiritual awareness marks had disappeared completely. Yang Chun could easily penetrate his own spiritual awareness into various magic weapons and explore the use of the magic weapons. Flying sword, weapons, defensive armor, amulets, all kinds of things were there. After exploring hundreds of items, Yang Chun did not find the medicine garden space. Fortunately, Yang Chun had patience and time, enough to look at everything. When Yang Chun explored a transparent crystal ball, he finally found what he was looking for. As soon as his spiritual awareness touched the crystal ball, it entered a huge space. However, the space seemed to have resistance. Yang Chun could only know that there was a large space inside, but he couldn't know what was inside. For the second city lord, this medicine garden was very important, and it had definitely been sacrificially refined many times. Yang Chun only got the body, but he had not yet collected it. It was not so easy to control the medicine garden. Yang Chun's first reaction was to find a way to collect the medicine garden space from the Chinquin bag. But soon Yang Chun gave up looking for it. The second city lord neither thought that he would die, nor did he want to ascend and leave the medicine garden to future generations. How could he leave the method of collecting it in his Chinquin bag? Yang Chun could only violently collect this medicine garden space. Chapter 610. The flight was long, and Yang Chun did not care about the time. It was not enough. On the issue of collecting this medicine garden, Yang Chun was still a little hesitant. Cracking it by force could easily make the space unstable, which would lead to the destruction of all the spirit medicines in the medicine garden. If Yang Chun wanted to get ahead in alchemy in this life, it would be useless without medicinal materials, so he attached great importance to medicinal materials. However, relatively speaking, this kind of medicine garden that was already in his hands, especially the medicine garden where the original owner had died, was the least difficult to crack by force. The only thing that was needed was time and cultivation base to erase the mark of the original owner little by little. Speaking of it, this was the least difficult one, as long as there was enough patience. Yang Chun originally planned to use this method, but before starting, Yang Chun suddenly thought of his own medicine garden. After the crazy irrigation of the first wood true essence spiritual solution, now the hidden portal in the medicine garden has become more and more solid, and there are signs of materialization. If he continues to inject the first wood true essence spiritual solution, he believed that he would be able to open the door soon. There was a possibility that people in the mortal world did not know that this kind of spatial magic weapon, especially this kind of medicine garden that could provide biological growth, had the innate characteristic of swallowing the same kind of space. Of course, it was the high-level space that swallowed the low-level space. The grade of the pure bottle medicine garden was so high that Yang Chun was also amazed. The 1,000-year-old medicinal materials were only the first space of the pure bottle medicine garden, and now Yang Chun was about to open the second space. This crystal ball medicine garden, even if the second city master exhausted his whole cultivation base to refine it, it was impossible to be more advanced than an old guy who had ascended. In this case, Yang Chun could directly let the pure bottle medicine garden swallow the crystal ball medicine garden without hurting the medicinal materials inside. Thinking of this, Yang Chun directly threw the crystal ball medicine garden into the pure bottle medicine garden. As soon as the two spaces came into contact with each other, it immediately made the pure bottle medicine garden shake, as if it was about to break. But Yang Chun knew that this was just the impact of the collision of the two spaces, and it would not really hurt the things inside. Even Shao Tian Yang Chun was not released in the medicine garden. As soon as he entered the space of the medicine garden, the crystal ball suddenly became larger and became a huge crystal that was almost comparable to the pure bottle medicine garden. At the edge of the pure bottle medicine garden, there was a crystal wall blocking Yang Chun's sight. Yang Chun understood that this huge crystal wall was the restriction of the second city Lord's crystal ball medicine garden. Because of this, the two gardens could not be merged. Next, Yang Chun began to hold the gourd, carefully controlled the first with true essence spiritual solution inside, separated a strand, and poured it into the medicine garden. This time, Yang Chun was not only watering the polite divine wood, but all the first wood were watered. Now with the gourd in hand, Yang Chun could easily control the outflow of the first wood true essence spiritual solution. No longer through the first wood flying sword as an intermediary, the effect was more direct. Other trees were not as slow as the Punlai Divine wood. Looking at the trees in the medicine garden, they grew rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, becoming thicker and taller, withered and flourished. Almost for a while, it was as if they had experienced a spring and autumn. Just after a few days of flying, except for the Punlai Divine wood, other trees, including the thunder pomegranate, all increased their age by hundreds of years. Even the most difficult to cultivate thunder pomegranate had almost become an old tree that was close to 1,000 years old. The thunder pomegranate fruit on the tree was already the size of a human head. Of course, the Punlai Divine wood must be irrigated. This was the most precious firstwood species in Yang Chen's medicine garden. Yang Chen has not stopped cultivating it for a moment. Yang Chen's judgment was correct. In a few days, the portal became clearer and clearer and had begun to have a substance. However, under the touch, it still felt very soft and tender, and there was nothing in the center of the portal. It seemed that when the portal was fully formed, a space passage would appear in the center of the portal, allowing Yang Chun to enter. Since there has been such a change, Yang Chun also understood that his choice was very correct, and he was more insistent. The crystal wall of the crystal ball medicine garden, with the infusion of Yang Chen's first wood true essence, also began to change slowly. In particular, when Yang Chun was pouring it, he first let the first wood true essence flow through the crystal wall, which was almost equivalent to the true essence sacrificial refining. The reason was very simple. Just as the water would grind the stones in the river into smooth pebbles and finally turn them into fine sand, the first wood true essence spiritual solution was the water flow, and the crystal wall was the stone in the water flow. Under this kind of scouring, Yang Chun did not even have to pay much spiritual power, and it was naturally completed. First, the translucent crystal wall turned into a light green color, and then he watched the crystal wall become more and more green, as if the green had deeply penetrated into the interior of the crystal wall. Next, he felt that the crystal wall began to slowly change from blurred to clear, which was a sign of the crystal wall being refined. The spiritual solution of the first wood true essence was the purest first wood true essence. Even the first wood spirit power in Yang Chen's body was not as strong as this first wood true essence spiritual solution. This most original spiritual power directly scoured the crystal wall. It was simply refining these crystal walls. It was just that the work that needed Yang Chen's painstaking efforts had now become automatic completion of the pure bottle medicine garden and the first wood true essence spiritual solution. Yang Chen felt that these crystal walls were thinning a little bit, and the space of the medicine garden was also nibbling away at the space barrier of the crystal ball medicine garden. Without the support of the master's power, how could the crystal ball medicine garden resist the nibbling away of the pure bottle medicine garden, where the spiritual power was full at any time and place? By the end of the 10th day, Yang Chun had discovered that the crystal wall was transparent, and the opposite seam could be vaguely seen. This situation greatly increased Yang Chen's confidence, and he simply accelerated the speed of the first wood true essence spiritual solution. Anyway, no matter how much first would true essence spiritual solution, as long as it reached the root of the Punlai Divine wood, it would all be absorbed, and it would not burst the pure bottle medicine garden. Accelerating the speed could speed up the scouring of the crystal wall. After another 10 days, Yang Chun had already felt that the crystal wall had thinned by half. It seemed that as long as there was the same time, he could completely swallow the entire crystal ball medicine garden and integrate it into the space of the pure bottle medicine garden. The vague portal did not seem to have changed much. It felt like it was only slightly harder to touch than before, but the extent was limited. Yang Chun didn't know how long it would take for this portal to form. He simply no longer paid attention to this side, but fully controlled the first with true essence spiritual solution and scoured the crystal wall of the crystal ball medicine garden. Chapter 611. Kacha, as if something had been broken, After Yang Chun spent another 10 days, the crystal wall of the crystal ball medicine garden suddenly cracked and then broke into pieces, bursting in all directions. As soon as the broken fragments touched anything in the medicine garden, whether it was herbs, trees, or soil, they all disappeared in an instant, as if they had been integrated into the medicine garden. A relatively unfamiliar force to Yang Chun swept across the entire medicine garden. It was mixed with a huge spiritual power like a strong wind, blowing from the pure bottle medicine garden to the newly added space. Yang Chun was outside, but his spiritual awareness was always paying attention to the medicine garden. He immediately understood that this was because the two medicine garden spaces had just merged, but the concentration of spiritual power on both sides was obviously different, so such a flow of spiritual power would occur. As for the strange force, Yang Chun had not figured out what was going on. The looming portal in the center of the pure bottle medicine garden suddenly turned into a taodai that sawed delicious food. A huge attraction was formed in the portal, and the sudden burst of power was absorbed into it. Immediately afterward, the portal began to change further. The edge of the portal, which was still a little soft, began to harden and really became solid. However, this process was not completed in an instant, but it started from the corner of the portal little by little and slowly spread to other directions of the portal. Seeing this scene, Yang Chun suddenly realized that perhaps this force was the power of space fusion, which was absorbed by the portal, saving Yang Chun the trouble of sacrificial refining. Now that the portal was still slowly taking shape, Yang Chun could not see the final result of the portal for a while. However, with the two medicine garden spaces merged, Yang Chun could carefully count what good medicinal materials he had. The expanded space of the pure bottle medicine garden was almost 100 acres. Compared to the original pure bottle space, it was nearly 1/3 of the area. In this extra area, countless kinds of medicinal materials were planted. Although it was not as neatly categorized as the pure bottle medicine garden, it was not messy. At least the medicinal materials with similar attributes were basically planted in the same area. The level of the crystal ball medicine garden was still relatively low, and its ability to simulate various environments was far less powerful than the purified bottle medicine garden. Some things that require extreme environments, such as the thunder pomegranate, can't be grown. However, even so, Yang Chun still saw many precious medicinal herbs. The profound yang fruit, which was the most abundant in Yang Chun's medicine garden, was also available here, but it was only a few hundred years old, far less than the age in the pure bottle medicine garden. However, there were also some medicinal herbs that Yang Chun's pure bottle medicine garden couldn't compare with. There was at least a large patch of ginseng and knotweed, all of which seemed to be 4,000 or 5,000 years old. Although there were some in Yang Chun's herb garden and they were quite old, they weren't as strong as this one. What surprised Yang Chun the most was a large number of precious medicinal herbs that only grew in the demonic beast plane. These herbs were very precious to the demon clan. Very few demon clan members would trade them with cultivators after harvesting them. Many of Yang Chun had only heard of them, but he had never seen them. He didn't expect that there would be such a large batch in the medicine garden of the Second City Lord. To be honest, the spirit medicine that could make the Second City Lord look at it in this medicine garden, any one of them could make people fight for it. The vision of a master of the Deshang stage was by no means an undeserved reputation. There were several kinds of medicinal herbs that made Yang Chun immediately remember a kind of medicinal pill that he had accidentally seen from the monster race's pill recipe. These medicinal herbs were enough for Yang Chun to refine a batch of medicinal pills that were called inner sensing pills by the monster race. The monster race's inner sensing pill, after taking it, could increase the senses of a user's whole body by 10 times. Whether it was the flow of the monster power or the various blood and qi in the body, the user could clearly perceive it. The senses were enhanced by 10 times, so that in the user's feeling, the various blood and qi circulation and the monster power and spirit power circulation were slowed down by 10 points, so that the user could have a further understanding of their own situation. This kind of medicinal pill that allowed him to thoroughly understand his own body's blood and monster power and spirit power circulation could effectively improve his perception of his current realm. In some cases, it had the same effect as the questioning inner heart pill. However, the material requirements of the questioning inner heart pill were too high, at least 10,000 years old. In contrast, the inner sensing pill was much simpler as long as it was 1,000 years old. It could basically be satisfied. Basically, the inner sensing pill only enhanced the senses, but the questioning inner heart pill could also calm a mind and prevent the emergence of the heart devil. In terms of effect, the inner sensing pill was an understanding of the body and cultivation base of the user, while the questioning inner heart pill focused on the understanding and thinking of the realm. Compared with the questioning inner heart pill, the inner sensing pill basically had no meaning for the masters of the Dashang stage. At the Dashang stage, the cultivator was already familiar with his own body and spirit power. If he wanted to improve, he could only improve his state of mind. Only cultivators below the Dashang stage needed the inner sensing pill. There was also a shortcoming of the inner sensing pill. That was because the sensory feeling was magnified 10 times. So in addition to the ones that he wanted to understand, the other tastes were magnified 10 times. Whether it was pain or itch or cold or hot, it was the same. After taking the medicine, during the period of the effect of the medicine, even if it was a gentle touch by others, it would make the user feel extreme pain. The friction between the clothes on the body and the skin could be regarded as torture. As for the changes in the surrounding heat and cold, it allowed people to experience the taste of extreme weather in a short period of time. But even with this side effect, the inner sensing pill had great benefits for the cultivator. If they entered the state of combat training after taking the medicine, and they could still fight normally under this degree of pain, basically some of the injuries in the battle could no longer affect the cultivator. This was not only an understanding of their own body, but also a tempering of their own will. The benefits were self-evident. However, this inner sensing pill required some of the monster race's specialty elixirs to be refined. Although it was not as precious as the 10,000 years old elixirs, it was also extremely rare. Even in the memory of his previous life, among the cultivators in the mortal world, no one had ever owned it. At present, the pill recipe and medicinal materials were all available, and Yang Chun himself was an alchemy master, which also meant that the inner sensing pill was no longer a patent of some monster race masters. At least the people around Yang Chun also had the opportunity to take it. The monster race did not have two strong alchemy masters, so the inner sensing pill was usually only a first-grade refining. Yang Chun was now curious about what would happen if he could refine the second-grade inner sensing pill. What would be the effect after taking it? Chapter 612. However, at this time, Yang Chun had no time to consider what the effect of the second-grade inner sensing pill was, because the portal of the pure bottle medicine garden had undergone a complete qualitative change at this moment. Perhaps it was precisely because of the space energy produced by the fusion of the space that after the portal was absorbed, it really reached the standard of qualitative change. Now, the looming portal of the pure bottle medicine garden had really stood in the middle of the medicine garden. The material of the portal was neither gold nor jade. The white door frame had no seam, and there was a beautiful engraved pattern on it. The center of the door frame was dark, and nothing could be seen. Whether it was from the front or the back of the door frame, it was the same, or there was no front or back at all. Where this dark portal led to, it was estimated that no one knew except the Immortal who had been killed by Yang Chun. Yang Chun directly put away the shuttle, then found a safe place and entered the medicine garden. Standing in front of the portal, Yang Chun was still hesitating whether to go in or not. If this was because he entered a portal in his own medicine garden and then he couldn't get out, it would be a big joke. The first floor of the medicine garden had the memory of his previous life, so Yang Chun was very relieved. However, now Yang Chun was not sure whether the second floor of the medicine garden left by the Immortal who was killed by him was a trap or a greater benefit. While hesitating, Xiao Tian, who had been cruising and playing in the medicine garden, suddenly twisted his body and slammed into the dark portal. Yang Chun didn't even have time to stop it. He saw a circle of ripples on the black portal, and then the figure of Xiao Tian disappeared without a trace. Xiao Tian was an important partner of Yang Chun. Although it was only discovered by accident, Yang Chun did cultivate Xiao Tian as his lifeblood. When he saw that Xiao Tian actually rushed in, he could no longer care about anything else. He took a step forward and rushed into the portal. In front of him was black, but it immediately became normal, and then Yang Chun immediately saw a familiar scene. He found himself in a huge space once again. The first thing that entered his eyes was a neat and tidy medicinal field. With just a casual glance, Yang Chun could tell that these were all elixirs that were at least 10,000 years old. Ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, and other medicinal herbs that people in the secular world usually thought were good things grew almost like crops here. People who didn't know their stuff would definitely think that the ginseng field not far away was planted with carrots. Who would have thought that they were all 10,000-year-old ginseng, with leaves exceeding the 10th grade? Not to mention the vermilion fruit, luohan bead, and huanyang grass. Any one of them was a 10,000-year-old spirit herb that could drive anyone crazy. Here, they were all planted neatly, as if they were soldiers waiting for inspection. You know, in his previous life, Yang Chun only found a 10,000-year-old vermilion fruit, which made Yang Lan kill the young palace master and blame it on Yang Chun. But at this moment, there were simply as many of these things as one wanted. How could one see any value in them? The figure of Xiao Tian rushed over and coiled on Yang Chun's arm. Seeing that Xiao Tian was fine, Yang Chun was also relieved. Turning around and glancing behind him, the dark door was still there, which also made Yang Chun feel at ease. Just as he was about to take a closer look at the things here, Xiao Tian suddenly screamed in one direction. Yang Chun was stunned, and his eyes immediately looked in that direction. The slave greets the master. In the direction of Xiao Tian's roar, two faint figures suddenly appeared, but they were the phantoms of two girls with two buns. The two figures were bowing to Yang Chun at this moment, but their bodies seemed to be trembling uncontrollably. In the medicine garden, this was his own territory. Yang Chun's body entered. Naturally, he would not use his spiritual awareness to explore. At first, he didn't find the two girls. It was Xiao Tian's reminder that Yang Chun noticed. With a sweep of his spiritual awareness, Yang Chun suddenly understood that these two girls were not real people, but the spirit of the medicine garden. It was estimated that this was also the reason why Xiao Tian would desperately rush in from the outside. This magic weapon spirit itself was Xiao Tian's favorite food. It was also a very normal thing for the two girls to tremble in front of Xiao Tian. However, it was also because of the deterrence of Xiao Tian that the two girls would appear to greet the master. Otherwise, if Yang Chun didn't pay attention, maybe the two spirits would have been hidden until the day he found out. Please forgive the master. The two spirit girls seemed to have the same mind, and even their voices were in unison. When Yang Chun came in, they didn't show up. Naturally, they didn't treat Yang Chun as the real master. Being forced out by Xiao Tian, of course, they had to apologize to Yang Chun. However, when Yang Chun's powerful spiritual awareness swept over their shadows, the two spirits felt the huge pressure of Yang Chun, almost crawling on the ground, and didn't dare to get up again. With this sweep of his spiritual awareness, Yang Chun immediately discovered that the two girls turned out to be yin and yang with attributes. No wonder there would be two spirits, first wood and second wood. It just happened to contain all the growing wood medicinal materials in the medicine garden. Yin and yang complemented each other. No wonder all the medicinal materials in this medicine garden were growing very vigorously, but there was a special master taking care of them. Shortly after the spiritual awareness touched the two women, Yang Chun soon received two thoughts, but it was the two girls. Yang Chun's heart moved. The beast controlling secret art was released, and these two thoughts were clearer. At the same time, two small light balls also flew out from the top of the two girls' heads and flew in front of Yang Chun. This scene was very familiar to Yang Chun. This was a trace of the life source monster soul. The two girls offered their life source monster soul, plus the thoughts that were transmitted. It was a posture of recognizing the master. Yang Chun did not hesitate at all and directly accepted the life source monster soul of the two girls. As soon as the monster soul entered Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, Yang Chen knew the true body of the two girls. The one on the left, wearing light green clothes, was a blue jade vine that specialized in detoxifying all kinds of poisons. The one on the right, wearing pink clothes, was a peach tree. It was easy to distinguish first wood and second wood. Slave Zhu Abai greets the master. Yang Chen accepted the life source monster soul, and the two women looked happy. Then they opened their mouths again, and this time even their names were reported. Get up, Yang Chen commanded, and let the two women get up. After standing up, Yang Chen discovered that he didn't know if the two women were intentional, or it was like this: the two women looked exactly the same. However, he didn't know how the two women became tool spirits. Even if they stood up, they still looked like nothingness, as if they had no substance at all. With a move in his heart, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness directly penetrated into the life source monster soul of the two women in his sea of consciousness. In just a moment, the figures of the two women seemed to solidify a lot. Chapter 613. With the infusion of Yang Chen's powerful spiritual awareness, the bodies of the two women became more and more solid. Looking at it again, it was no longer a phantom, but a solid body. Thank you, Master. Zhu and Abai certainly felt the changes in their bodies, and they bowed to Yang Chen again. Then Zhu said, Master, the maids don't need Master to consume any more spiritual awareness, as long as Master adds some spiritual power. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was already at the peak of the early Deshang stage, and it was unreasonably condensed. Just now, even 1 or 2% of it was not used, but the two women could no longer bear it. With the replenishment of spiritual power, Yang Chen was even more relaxed. Zhu belonged to the first wood. He directly controlled the extremely small trace of the first wood true essence in the gourd and sent it into Zhu's body. Suddenly, Zhu seemed to have eaten a big tonic. Her face quickly turned red, and then her body changed between a young girl and a peach tree countless times, and finally became a young girl again. With this change, Zhu looked no different from a real person. Abai next to her looked curious and envious. Of course, Yang Chen would not favor one over the other. With a wave of his hand, a second wood spirit power was also sent into Abai's body. Compared with the first wood true essence, the spiritual power of the blood phantom vine was not enough. It was not the purest, but for Abai, it was already a good nourishment. However, the second wood spirit power had not yet condensed, and it took Yang Chen a lot of effort to complete the infusion of spiritual power. My second wood spirit power is still a little short. When I find a second wood true essence later, I will replenish your spiritual power again. Although the spiritual power had been replenished, compared with Zhu, Abai still lacked some of the most fundamental things in her aura. Yang Chen knew why, so he put down the words first. Both Zhu and Abai had handed over their life source monster souls to him, and their life and death were in the hands of Yang Chen. This was definitely his own people. Yang Chen would certainly not be stingy. Thank you, Master. Zhu and Abai thanked Yang Chen again. Because of the connection with Yang Chen, Xiao Tian also understood that the two spirit girls could not move their mouths and obediently shrank on Yang Chen's arm. The two women were no longer so afraid, and their bodies stopped trembling. A lot of thoughts were transmitted from the original monster soul, and Yang Chen soon understood the origins of the two women. Zhu and Abai were originally the first two plants transplanted into the medicine garden by the original owner of the medicine garden. They were originally spirit plants that were over 10,000 years old. Because they were the oldest in the medicine garden, they were nurtured by the original owner of the medicine garden. Before the original owner of the medicine garden ascended, Zhu and Abai already had consciousness. However, he had only just awakened his spiritual wisdom and was far from becoming a demon. In fact, in the medicine garden, there were few medicinal materials that would develop spiritual wisdom. This kind of pure artificial spiritual power, nourishment, was impossible to turn the medicinal materials in the medicine garden into a demon. The reason why the two women would have consciousness was that they were outside, nourished by the spirit of heaven and earth and tempered by the essence of the sun and the moon, and they already had the qualifications to become a demon. Under the nourishment of the huge spiritual power of the medicine garden, they gradually opened their spiritual wisdom. However, it was obvious that the original owner of the medicine garden did not want to have two evildoers in his own medicine garden. So it was easy to extract their monster souls and refine them together with the medicine garden, becoming the spirit of the medicine garden's bottle. Of course, because their bodies were in the medicine garden, the two tool spirits did not suffer much damage. As a result, Zhu and Abai became the people responsible for taking care of all the medicinal materials in the medicine garden, until the original owner ascended and closed the second layer of the medicine garden, and also sealed the two women in it. If the new owner of the medicine garden could not open the second layer of the medicine garden, in the subconscious of the original owner, there was no way to become the owner of the medicine garden. Therefore, until Yang Chun entered the second layer of the medicine garden, Zhu and Abai did not and could not take the initiative to establish a master-servant relationship with Yang Chun. When Yang Chun came in, it was not that the two women did not want to communicate with Yang Chun, but because the first one to come in was Xiao Tian, and Yazi was almost a natural enemy of the tool spirits, the two women were scared on the spot and did not dare to move. If it weren't for the appearance of Yang Chun, the two women would not dare to show up at all. Understanding the origin, Yang Chun naturally would not have any complaints about the two women. Now that the two women had completely recognized him as their master, Yang Chun had two more experts who could take care of the medicinal materials. In the future, the medicinal materials in the medicine garden would only grow better and better, and Yang Chun could not help but be happy. Because of the existence of Zhu and Abai, Yang Chun was now almost clear about the medicinal materials in the second layer of the medicine garden. Even with the mentality of a great principal golden immortal, when Yang Chun really understood what the medicinal materials in the medicine garden were, he was still shocked and couldn't believe it. The second layer of the medicine garden was much larger than the first layer, almost 1,000 miles in radius. Relatively speaking, it was almost a complete small world. Near the portal, there were only the most common elixirs, which were planted by the two women as crops. The ones that really needed all kinds of special environments were still far away. From Zhu and Abai, Yang Chun soon knew what was in this medicine garden. Basically, it could be said that as long as the medicinal materials needed in the mortal world, there were almost all of them here. Not only those advanced ones, but even some of the herbs used by ordinary people in the mortal world were all here. However, no matter how ordinary it was, the ordinary herbs that have been carefully cared for tens of thousands of years have also become treasures. In addition to those special things, such as medicinal materials such as golden stone, or things such as monster cores and devil spirits. As long as it was the medicinal materials needed for medicinal pills in the mortal world, Yang Chun had almost all of them, and all of them were valuable 10,000 years old elixirs. Perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, these medicinal materials were very ordinary and not worth mentioning. So the immortal did not take the medicine garden with him when he ascended, but left an opportunity for the younger generation. Who could have thought that after tens of thousands of years, these ordinary things would become such rare treasures? Time can make many things decay, but it can also make many things extraordinary, and these tens of thousands of years old elixirs that have been carefully cared for were part of it. The medicine garden is well taken care of. Yang Chun really praised. In the first layer of the medicine garden, Yang Chun did not carefully plan it. What was originally was still what it was now. With Zhu and Abai, he just let them take care of it. Zhu and Abai could also pass through the portal. When they followed Yang Chun to the first layer of the medicine garden outside, Abai first saw a lot of 10,000 years old elixirs there, as well as the blood phantom vine that had just recovered its vitality. As for Zhu, she stared directly at the Penglai divine wood forest, opened her mouth wide, moved a few times, and couldn't say anything. Chapter 614. As the first wood tool spirit of the medicine garden, at least in the understanding of trees such as the first wood, Zhu also had a considerable eyesight. However, when she saw the Penglai divine wood's forest, she was still shocked by Yang Chun's big move. Because of the closure of the second layer of the medicine garden, Zhu and Abai did not know that many new species were planted in the first layer. However, after all, Both women were tool spirits. As soon as they came to the first layer, they almost immediately knew what was planted here. The original medicinal herbs were basically the seeds thrown out by a Zhu and by thousands of years ago. Because of the relationship of the medicine garden, countless thousand-year-old medicinal herbs have been successfully cultivated. Basically, what was there, the two women were probably clear. But now, there were so many more things. The 10,000-year spirit medicine was still ordinary. In the second layer, there were medicinal herbs that were tens of thousands of years old. However, the Punlai Divine Wood and the Blood Phantom Vine were not common. In particular, the Punlai Divine Wood was simply the best of the best. This was already the purest first wood aura that could be heard in the mortal world. After standing for a long time, Zhu reacted. As soon as she woke up, she immediately rushed directly into the Punlai Divine Wood forest. Feeling the pure first wood aura, she was overjoyed, as if she had gotten something she loved. Although the first wood true essence was the purest first wood aura, relatively speaking, Zhu preferred the Punlai Divine Wood, a plant with a body. As a tool spirit, she shuttled through the Punlai Divine Wood forest like a happy deer. Abai next to her also had some curious things. She was now squatting in front of the Blood Phantom Vine, curiously staring at the Blood Phantom Vine up and down. Her body was a blue jade vine, which was a natural nemesis for the poisonous Blood Phantom Vine. If this Blood Phantom Vine was not planted by her master, maybe she would have already used her body to remove the poison of the Blood Phantom Vine. Yang Chun did not speak, comparing a Zhu and Abai's familiarity with plants. It was simply showing off in front of an expert. The two tool spirits had a plant body, and after being sacrificially refined by the tool spirit, they almost had an instinct to communicate with plants. Although the various spirit medicines were not necessarily intelligent, Zhu and Abai could understand the needs of the plants themselves through contact with the plant body. This would also allow the two women to take better care of the various spirit herbs. In this regard, Zhu and Abai were definitely the most competent planting masters. No matter what plants were handed over to them, they would know how to cultivate them. The fact that none of the spirit herbs in the second layer of the medicine garden had withered was proof of this. Seeing that a Zhu had now stopped shuttling through the Punlai Divine Woods, but changed to holding the Punlai Divine Woods one by one, putting her small head on the trunk of each Punlai Divine Wood, as if listening to something. A Zhu's strange behavior seemed that Abai didn't care at all. After watching the Blood Phantom Vine alone for a while, she began to work. As an artifact spirit, it had almost the same dominance as the owner of the herb garden. Soon, all the 10,000 years elixir transplanted later disappeared directly, and at the same time, Abai's figure also disappeared in front of Yang Chun. However, Yang Chun knew that Abai had already taken these elixirs into the second layer space, where it was more suitable for the growth of these elixirs. Zhu was still inspecting the Punlai Divine Woods one by one, but Abai's work had been completed, and her figure appeared in front of Yang Chun in the first layer space. Next, Abai was interested in the extra ocean around the space. Since Yang Chun sacrificially refined it with the 10th water true essence, there was an extra ocean around the herb garden space. Although there were no marine elixirs growing in it, it already had a growth environment. It had to be said that even if Yang Chun had the pill recipe in his memory, plus the pill recipe learned in this life, all the raw materials used in the medicinal pills were not as good as the medicinal herbs in the sea. It seemed that it was easy for everyone to ignore some of the materials on the seabed, but ordinary people would use some ordinary marine products, such as sea cucumbers and fur seals that were easy to catch as medicine. Abai stood by the sea of the herb garden and soon understood what these were. With a wave of her little hand, most of the ocean disappeared without a trace. In Yang Chen's mind, a scene soon appeared. In the second layer space of the herb garden, the edge of the space also expanded, turning into a small ocean. It seemed that after the sacrificial refining of the 10th water true secret art, even the second layer space began to grow larger. Next, Abai began to study the soil of the first layer of the herb garden. This was the soil that had been sacrificially refined by the 5th earth true essence. Although the original soil was already very fertile, There was no such pure fifth earth chi after all. Feeling this vigorous aura, Abai's little face was full of joy. Looking at Abai's appearance, she still wanted to move the soil that had been sacrificially refined by the fifth earth true essence into the second layer space. Yang Chun directly stopped her. For Yang Chen's obstruction, Abai looked very incomprehensible. Her face was full of grievances. Standing in front of Yang Chun, she was very unhappy. Don't worry, after Aju side is done, I will use the fifth earth true essence, seventh metal true essence, first with true essence, and 10th water true essence to sacrificial refine the second layer of the Her Garden. Yang Chun explained with a smile. Hearing Yang Chen's explanation, Abai turned from annoyance to joy, and a happy smile appeared on her face. Of course, Yang Chun was even happier. With Aju and Abai, not only could he more thoroughly master the pure bottle Her Garden, but he also had 2 more good hands to take care of the elixirs in the Her Garden. This kind of thing couldn't be found with a lantern. Aju and Abai clearly became stronger with the years to reach this point. If Aju and Abai had such ability before the original owner ascended, it was estimated that the guy would have ascended with the pure bottle Her Garden. Now it was all cheap to Yangshen. Aju finally reached the last Penglai Divine Wood, clinging to the huge trunk, but her hands couldn't hold it. Her little face clung to the trunk. Her face was dignified, and it took a long time before she reluctantly let go. Master, seeing that Yang Chun had been watching, Aju was a little surprised. She quickly came over and rushed to Yang Chun with a curtsy. Do you like these Penglai Divine Woods? Yang Chun asked with a smile. And Aju nodded heavily and answered affirmatively. But soon, there was some hesitation. It seemed that there was something she didn't dare to say. What's wrong? Did I take care of it wrong? Yang Chun asked in confusion. If these Penglai Divine Woods were really destroyed because of him, it would be a great sin. Master, most of these Penglai Divine Woods seem to have some spiritual wisdom. Aju didn't speak, but when she spoke, it directly shocked Yang Chun. Chapter 615. It has spiritual wisdom? Yang Chun was shocked and hurriedly asked, when did this happen? The general tree was not easy to open spiritual wisdom, but once it had spiritual wisdom, then with the deep accumulation of thousands of years, it was destined to become a master. The old tree, Demon Gui Shanyu, was like this, and the same was true for the future Mu Bo Yang. Chun couldn't imagine what kind of future it would have if the Penglai Divine would become a spirit. If this was true, then compared with the Penglai Divine Wood, whether it was the old tree demon or Mu Bo, these present and future masters, in front of the great accomplishment Penglai Divine Wood demon, were definitely the role of the younger generation. It's the recent thing, Aju replied very firmly. These Penglai Divine Woods have experienced tens of thousands of years of land nourishment with a trace of power of will, and have already buried a seed of spiritual wisdom. Recently, it has been watered with a lot of first wood true essence, and the seed has begun to germinate slowly, but most people still can't detect it. Recently, Yang Chun was a little relieved. If the Penglai Divine Wood in his own medicine garden had any changes and he did not know it, it also showed that he was too lazy. Nourished by the land with the power of will, it clearly said that it was in the temple of the earth, and at that time, Yang Chun dug out the location of the Penglai Divine Wood box. It should be the location where people worship the earth. Nourished by the power of will, there was actually a seed of spiritual awareness. It was indeed a magical thing. However, Master, it's a pity. Yang Chun was relieved. Aju suddenly sighed, and Yang Chun was somewhat puzzled. What's a pity? Yang Chun did not understand what Aju was referring to, and asked doubtfully. The last period of nourishment of the first wood true essence should be the most critical time to open the spiritual awareness. But when they accept the first wood true essence, they also fully accept the spiritual awareness of the Master. Aju replied with regret. What will happen? Yang Chun still did not understand, but he knew why this was the case. At that time, Yang Chun wanted to control the flow of the first with true essence. Of course, he had to use his spiritual awareness to control it, which was also something that could not be helped. Once they gain sentience, they will automatically treat their master as their master. There was still a regretful tone in Azu's tone. It seemed that these Penglai Divine Wood demons were not worth it. Yang Chun was also stunned. As a cultivator, Yang Chun naturally knew the difference between a free demon race and a demon race that recognized a master. After recognizing a master, there would be some limitations. At least to a certain extent, the real experts were still the demons who cultivated on their own. However, now Yang Chun had no way. When he controlled the first wood true essence to irrigate the Penglai Divine Wood, he simply wanted to absorb the first wood true essence spiritual solution. He did not think about cultivating any monster race, nor did he think about giving these Penglai Divine Woods a spiritual awareness mark. It was completely unconscious. It was precisely because of this that the Penglai Divine Wood, which had been scoured by Yang Chen's spiritual awareness for a long time on the spiritual awareness seed, was not as simple as Yang Chen eliminating the spiritual awareness mark. They had already firmly remembered Yang Chen's spiritual awareness in their souls, and naturally recognized Yang Chen as their master. Even if it was his own medicine garden tool spirit, Aju still felt pity for these Penglai Divine Woods. This was not a betrayal of Yang Chen, but a pure pity for this kind of spiritual wood between the heavens and earth to suffer such a fate. Yang Chen also felt some pity, but in addition to the pity, there was a layer of joy. If this was the case, didn't it mean that he had so many more masters available to him out of thin air? Moreover, they were still the most loyal kind. How long will it take for them to open their spiritual awareness? Yang Chun quickly calmed his mind and asked very seriously. At least 10 years, and they must always maintain that level of first wood true essence irrigation. Aju roughly estimated and then replied, for 10 years, and to always control the irrigation of the first wood true essence. Even Yang Chun could not help but sigh. If he wanted to train a group of senior subordinates, it was also a hard effort. If I increase the irrigation speed of the first wood true essence, will the effect be better? Yang Chun asked with a frown. If they could only serve the Penglai Divine Woods for 10 years, it would be a pity. Of course. Aju glanced at Yang Chun and seemed to complain a little. If you can soak them in the first wood true essence, the speed will be faster. If they are soaked in the first wood true essence, will there be any problems? Yang Chun had been worried that these Penglai Divine Woods would have problems if they were irrigated by a large amount of first wood true essence, so he tried to control the amount of first wood true essence. Now that Aju said this, wasn't his previous efforts useless? One must know that the Banyan Tree Immortal's cave was not without tree demons, but it was still blown up by the first wood true essence spiritual solution. Yang Chan was also for the sake of safety, otherwise he would not spend this kind of effort. The natural divine wood is not our ordinary wood. The stronger the first wood true essence, the better. How can there be a problem? Aju quickly replied. Does the master think that the divine word of this Penglai divine wood is easy to call out? Being taught a lesson by a tool spirit, it was the first time for Yang Chun. However, this allowed Yang Chun to find a faster way to cultivate the Penglai divine wood. After thinking about it, Yang Chun still asked, in this medicine garden, can it bear a lot of first wood true essence? Of course not in the first layer. Zhu replied seriously, but the second layer is completely fine. There is no problem with how much first wood true essence. Transplant them to the second layer. Yang Chun decisively commanded. The Penglai divine wood was naturally taken care of by Aju. Soon, Aju transplanted these Penglai divine woods to the appropriate location in the second layer. After doing all this, Aju and Abai curiously looked at Yang Chun, not knowing what he was going to do. Yang Chun did not explain and directly controlled the space of the medicine garden, forming a huge pit on the side of the Penglai divine wood. Later, in the puzzled eyes of Aju and Abai, he took out the gourd, opened the bottle, and began to pour into the big pit. The first wood true essence spiritual solution flew into the big pit like a waterfall. After a while, Yang Chun poured out half of the first wood true essence spiritual solution, and the big pit was also filled. From the moment when the first wood true essence spiritual solution began to pour, Aju and Abai directly became two stunned statues, looking at the situation in front of them. They were shocked and could no longer move. Who could have thought that the precious first wood true essence, the purest first wood aura between heaven and earth, had actually been condensed into liquid drops? The most incredible thing was that such a spiritual solution, there was actually so much of Small Lake. This kind of nourishment, how long will it take? Yang Chun put away the gourd and asked casually. Chapter 6:16. Both Zhu and Abai had been there for a long time without making a sound. Even if they were tool spirits, even if their bodies were also blue jade vines and peach trees, even if they could mobilize all the spiritual power of the medicine garden to nourish a certain place at any time, when had they ever seen such a scene? The first wood true essence was not enough. It turned out to be a spiritual liquid condensed by the first wood true essence. This drop was enough to make people salivate, but Yang Chun poured it down as if it didn't cost anything. For a while, the two women were shocked and couldn't say a word. It wasn't until Yang Chun asked again that Zhu realized that the master had something to ask. After a hurried estimate, she quickly replied, "If this is the case, it will take at most 1 year before they will have spiritual wisdom and can start cultivating." Getting this answer, Yang Chun was also secretly happy in his heart. Each of these Penglai divine woods was of excellent quality. It was conceivable that after opening their spiritual wisdom, their aptitude for cultivation was absolutely not bad. With these dozens of loyal subordinates, Yang Chun could do a lot of things more easily. Take good care of them, Yang Chun told Zhu and Abai, and then returned to the outside. The two tool spirits, Zhu and Abai, have already received great benefits from Yang Chun, and Yang Chun promised to immediately sacrificial refine the second layer of the medicine garden space after coming out, so they were overjoyed. Naturally, they put Yang Chun's words in their hearts and did not dare to forget them. Yang Chun did not forget his original intention of coming out this time. The first wood true essence had been in his hands, and the first wood true secret art had also been completed. Next, he would go and collect the future little monstrous talent, Mubo. After identifying it, Yang Chun drove the shuttle to continue moving forward. Holding the medicine garden bottle in his hand, Yang Chun began the overall sacrificial refining. Now that Yang Chun's cultivation had risen by a large level, and his spiritual sense had become unreasonably strong, the sacrificial refining was much easier than in the past, and it also saved a lot of time. Originally, Yang Chun had already carried out the sacrificial refining of the second layer of the Heavenly Spirit Treasure refining secret art, and the fourth layer of the Earth Fiend sacrificial formation secret art. Now it was simply combined with the Dome Hall to carry out the sacrificial refining. In just half a year, Yang Chun re-refined the medicine garden to the second layer of Heavenly Dipper and the fourth layer of Earth Fiend. This time, with the promotion of the first with Jindan, Yang Chun immediately tried to carry out the sacrificial refining of the Heavenly Dipper third layer and the Earth Fiend sixth layer. The initial stage of the sacrificial refining process was smooth, as if it was a matter of course. Of course, Yang Chun also understood that Zhu and Abai recognized him as their master. The entire herb garden did not resist at all, so the refinement process was extremely smooth. Zhu and Abai happily looked at all the space of medicine garden. The soil had all turned into the fifth earth layer, and after being sacrificial refined by the seventh metal true essence, even the land contained the seventh metal aura, with the meaning of earth giving birth to metal. The surrounding sea was wider, and the first wood was thriving. Compared with the first wood plants, the improvement of the second wood was not very obvious. First, Yang Chun did not have the second wood true essence, and second, Yang Chun did not have so much second wood true essence spiritual solution to nourish all the second wood medicinal materials. I really want to see what rare spirit medicines are in the ocean. A thought passed to Yang Chun's mind from the distant bottle, but it was the common thought of Zhu and Abai. There was no condition before, but now there was a wide ocean, which was completely suitable for planting. There will be a chance. Yang Chun sent a wisp of thought to Zhu and Abai, and then stopped the sacrificial refining of the medicine garden's purified bottle and began to think about where he was. According to Yang Chun's calculation, he had not yet reached the forest where Mubo was. However, the surrounding weather had already cooled down, and white snow began to appear along the way. Remembering that Mu Bo was born in a cypress forest, Yang Chun opened his spiritual awareness and began to slowly look for cypress along the way. Now Yang Chen's spiritual awareness could cover at least a few hundred miles. As long as the speed was a little slower, he could fly over and he could know the movements within 100 miles. What kind of trees were there? It was naturally clear at a glance. After going north for thousands of miles, Yang Chun noticed that there were many more cold astral winds around. Generally speaking, weaker demonic beasts would be severely injured by this kind of astral wind, not to mention the coldness that was mixed in it, which could almost freeze a person in an instant. It was just the cold or just the astral wind. The power was not much, but everyone knew that if something was frozen solid, when it was frozen and brittle, as long as a little force was used, the whole body would be crushed. The astral wind plus the cold was such an effect. It was no wonder that Mu Bo had such achievements later. Growing up in such an environment, from a moment of germination, he grew up in hardship all the time, experienced countless sufferings, and faced the test of life and death at any time. Such a person, a monster, if he had no future, it would be a strange thing. Yang Chun was in the shuttle and did not have to directly withstand this astral wind. However, after noticing the astral wind, Yang Chun put away the shuttle and turned to flying on his own sword. Was there anything better than fighting against this kind of astral wind at any time to consolidate his cultivation base? The cold astral wind blew on the body. It was like countless knives scratching. Even Yang Chun had to force the astral wind out of his body and fly slowly. But soon, Yang Chun found that this effect was not good. He simply let go of the resistance, let the astral wind blow on his body, and he began to cultivate the yellow, turban strongman body refining technique, relying on the physical strength to resist the astral wind. The astral wind was mixed with ice and snow and kept hitting Yang Chen's body. Yang Chen's body seemed to be made of fine steel. No matter what hit it, it would be smashed. Under such circumstances, Yang Chun unexpectedly found that in order to resist the cold and astral wind and this kind of ice and snow, the cultivation speed of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique had also improved. It seemed that this was a little passive defense effect under pressure. With such benefits, Yang Chun was certainly not in a hurry to find Mu Bo immediately. In such a large snow-raging area, while cultivating the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, he slowly looked for the extremely rare cypress forest. He knew that it was in this direction, but he didn't know the specific location. In this area of millions of miles, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. However, Yang Chen was not in a hurry. Anyway, he could temper the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Even if he couldn't find it in the end, Yang Chun would not be upset. It could only mean that Mu Bo and himself were not fated. For cultivators, fate was also very important. It was strange to say that when Yang Chun slowly flew in this area with this mentality, he suddenly found a cypress forest within the scope of his spiritual awareness. Chapter 617. Intentionally planting flowers, but not letting it bloom. Unintentionally inserting willow trees. Perhaps this was the situation. When Yang Chun was aware of this, he also slightly smiled. It seemed that this Mu Bo might really be fated with him in this life. Slowly flying over, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness began to explore unscrupulously in the cypress forest. The appearance of such a cypress forest in the north was not a surprising thing, but in this extreme weather, it was somewhat rare. This cypress forest had a radius of 100 miles. Almost no one would set foot in this ice field, so there was no trace of human habitation here. After the powerful spiritual awareness scanned it, Yang Chun soon discovered that there was a spiritual vein under this cypress forest. No wonder there would be so many cypress trees growing, and there would also be an enchanting guy like Mu Bo. It turned out to be like this. The spiritual awareness of the Dashang stage explored it, and the movement in the cypress forest was almost clear at a glance. After a while, Yang Chun found at least 100 cypresses. The cultivation base was from the Qi refining stage to the peak Jiedon stage. Yang Chun couldn't determine which one was the mu bow he was looking for, so he could only look for it according to his cultivation aptitude. Speaking of it, these cypress trees that could become monsters were all outstanding in this cypress forest. Otherwise, it would be impossible to stand out among almost hundreds of thousands of cypress trees. However, the mu bow that Yang Chun was looking for was a rare genius, and his cultivation aptitude was absolutely outstanding. Therefore, as long as Yang Chun found the best one, it should not be wrong. Of course, the aptitude was not absolute. The acquired character and opportunity could also change the conditions of a person's life. This was the case for humans, and the same was true for monsters. Under the pressure of Yang Chen's Deshang stage spiritual awareness, even the cypress monster, who had already reached the peak Jidan stage, could not help but tremble slightly. Although these cypresses have not been transformed, all of them were in the shape of big trees. It seemed that only the trunks and treetops were shaking with the strong wind, but Yang Chun understood that they were afraid. A peak Jidan stage cultivator, being explored by a master of the Deshang stage with his spiritual awareness, would definitely be scared out of his wits. Of course, a freak like Yang Chun was an exception. This group of cypresses was in such a state. They all thought that they were being stared at by a master of the Deshang stage, so they were all silent and did not dare to make any extra movements. Every cypress monster, Yang Chun carefully explored. Each situation, Yang Chun had some understanding. Soon, Yang Chun's attention was focused on the two cypresses. One was naturally the cypress monster of the peak Jidan stage, and the other was a little cypress monster that had just condensed its dan. The one with the highest cultivation base, Yang Chun would certainly pay attention. However, Yang Chun found that this cypress monster of the peak Jidan stage was not the best. The reason why it had the highest cultivation base was because it was the oldest. Under the nourishment of the spiritual vein for many years, it had reached the present stage. The other young little cypress monster was the one with the best qualifications that Yang Chun had. The body was holding the crown of the tree in the surrounding ordinary cypress, and there was no trace of side branches on the long trunk. The trunk was straight up, and there was no scar or anything else. The root system was very solid and developed, almost several times larger than the surrounding cypresses. In addition to this, there was another point. This little cypress monster had a mellow spiritual power than others. Even if it was in the same realm, it was a bit stronger than those around it. After determining these two goals, Yang Chun used the beast-controlling secret art to convey his thoughts. Soon he came into contact with the thoughts of the cypress monster of the peak Jidan stage. I don't know which expert is coming. Please forgive me. As the oldest and most qualified cypress monster, the old tree of the peak Jidan stage naturally became the patriarch of this cypress family. Being oppressed by Yang Chen's Deshang realm spiritual awareness, the old tree took it for granted and asked Yang Chun to forgive him first. We have not offended him. Why should we ask him to forgive us? A thought next to him was very clear. Yang Chun could not help but laugh. This expression of dissatisfaction was actually the little cypress monster that he had taken a fancy to. Yang Chun did not speak. He angrily snorted, and a spiritual awareness oppressed over. The spiritual awareness of the Deshang realm directly descended on the head of the little cypress monster. Suddenly, the little cypress monster seemed to have a big mountain on its head. The figure of Yang Chun seemed to have suddenly turned into the most powerful god, and he could crush the little cypress monster into pieces at any time and anywhere. Under such pressure, the little cypress monster suddenly burst out, and its body suddenly showed a green color. The snowflakes on the canopy fell, and it unexpectedly resisted the pressure of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness. It did not want to give in at all. At first glance, it was a stubborn kid. Interesting, Yang Chun sneered, and the sneer made people shudder. Master, calm your anger. The child is not sensible. I also asked the master to forgive him. When the old cypress saw it, he was almost scared into a cold sweat. Fortunately, he was just a cypress and would not sweat. However, he still hurriedly expressed to Yang Chun the intention to ask Yang Chun to calm his anger. This little cypress monster was his descendant. Now that Yang Chun was a senior, he still dared to contradict him like this, which really made the old cypress shocked. If Yang Chun was angry and destroyed their whole family, it did not seem to be a big deal, and with Yang Chen's spiritual awareness, it was not a difficult thing. He was not afraid of pressure, and even dared to express his opinion in the face of the spiritual awareness of the Deshang realm. His will was tenacious. Yang Chun had even determined that this little guy was the future generation monster Mu Bo he was looking for. If you want me to calm my anger, I can. Yang Chun directly sent a message to the old tree in the peak Jidan realm. This little guy is very interesting. I intend to accept him as a disciple. What do you think? Just now, he was still under the pressure of the spiritual awareness, and in the blink of an eye, he wanted to accept a disciple. This change made the old tree puzzled for a while. Looking at Yang Chun, he did not know what he wanted to do. I think he has a good aptitude. I intend to accept him as a disciple. What do you think? Seeing the old tree in a daze, Yang Chun asked again. Only then did the old tree react. It hurriedly transmitted its thoughts. It's my grandson's fortune that you've taken a fancy to him. I can't ask for more. I don't want to be his disciple. The old tree expressed his willingness here, and the little cypress over there said with some dissatisfaction. When he opened his mouth, the old tree was so scared that he almost rushed over to cover his mouth. You don't want to? Yang Chun was a little surprised. If someone in the monster race was willing to support them, almost all of them wanted it. But this little guy was actually unwilling? Chapter 618. You are just a cultivator in the early Jidan stage. Why should you be my master? This time, the little guy directly said the true cultivation base of Yang Chun, and even recognized that Yang Chun was not a monster race cultivator, but a cultivator. Yang Chun was stunned. He had been using his spiritual awareness to suppress all the cypresses here, just to give them an illusion, let them feel that he was a master of the Deshang stage, and dare not resist. Even the old tree in the peak Jidan stage was deceived by him, but it was seen through by the little tree monster. After being in a daze, Yang Chun couldn't help but admire in his heart. This time he picked up a treasure. Regardless of whether the little tree monster was the evildoer Mu Bo, this eyesight and the means of not being suppressed by spiritual awareness could definitely occupy a place among the future monster race masters. You are just in the Jidan stage. Listening to the words of the little tree monster, the old tree in the peak Jidan stage also began to shake. He was very clear about the eyesight of his grandson. Even he could not hide it. Yang Chun turned out to be only in the early Jidan stage, and he still called him a senior. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was too powerful. When it was released to suppress these cypresses, they almost did not dare to doubt it. There was also a little tree monster who raised questions. I am in the early Jidan stage, but I can still be your master. Yang Chen's figure had fallen and stood in front of the little tree monster. Talk after you've defeated us. The little tree monster could not speak, but the idea that was transmitted arrived at the same time, but it was his thick branch. The little tree monster was very confident, and Yang Chun was very sure of this. This showed that it was not the first time he did this kind of thing. That is to say, the little tree monster at least competed with other companions here. With his strength in the early Jidan stage, he dared to challenge Yang Chun, and he was still so confident, indicating that he had won more than once. Maybe the old cypress was not his opponent. The early Jidan stage could deal with the peak Jidan stage. This kind of strong performance could almost be compared with the current Yang Chun. Yang Chun was now more and more interested in the performance of the little tree monster. He was almost certain that this little guy was the future evildoer Mu Bo standing in the same place. Yang Chun did not move and directly used his body to take the attack of the little tree monster. Boom! The thick branches of the little tree monster were drawn on Yang Chen's body. His body, which had been tempered by Yang Chen's yellow turban strongman body refining technique, still felt a burst of pain. If he had not been prepared and had already prepared the golden bell, this blow might have made Yang Chen's skin be torn. It's not strong enough, and the means of attack are single. Yang Chun shook his head at the little tree monster in front of him and still did not make a move. Yang Chun shook his head at the little tree monster in front of him and still did not make a move. This was a common method of the tree monster. Once entangled by the roots, they would be bound and then get tighter and tighter and finally unable to support and die. However, Yang Chun just stretched out his hand and pulled his arms, and the thickest root that entangled himself was pulled away. Then Yang Chun just pulled a few times, but the little tree monster clearly felt a huge force pulling his limbs apart and could no longer entangle Yang Chun. Boom! A large tree trunk suddenly stretched out around, but some of the surrounding cypresses saw that the situation was not good, and they all attacked. Yang Chun still did not dodge and let the attack fall on him. Bang, bang, bang. A series of sounds rang out. A group of cypresses only felt that their attacks fell on an iron lump, and the strength of the shock even made them feel pain. Whiz! There was a sound of an object crossing the space at high speed, and an emerald green light and shadow cut through the space, directly chopping at the throat of Yang Chun. With a crisp sound, the green shadow stopped, but it was a wood attribute flying sword. At first glance, it was refined from its own body, but at the moment, it stopped in front of Yang Chun's throat, and it could not move an inch. Flying sword is good, but the tempering time is too short, and the material is single. There is no other material to supplement, whether it is sharpness or texture. It is somewhat lacking. Yang Chun turned his head and looked at the owner of the flying sword, the old cypress in the peak Jidon stage. Here, only he had the ability to refine the flying sword, and other cypresses did not have such a level. This was the sorrow of ordinary monster cultivators. For a long time, in the absence of inheritance, they could only cultivate according to their own instincts. In terms of refining and alchemy, they were very weak, even if they were as strong as the old tree monster Gui Shanyu. They also had the same problem. It was not until he met Yang Chun that he gradually changed his view. You have all moved your hands. Now it should be my turn, right? Yang Chun smiled at the old cypress. This smile, in the eyes of the old cypress, suddenly had a bad feeling. The old cypress hurriedly passed a trace of thought. Sir, please be merciful. As soon as the thought arrived, the figure of Yang Chun had already appeared beside him. It was not seen how Yang Chun attacked, but he just reached out and hugged the body of the old cypress. His arms exerted force and shouted, Up! The huge body of the old cypress, under the pull of Yang Chun's arms, began to leave the ground and was pulled out by Yang Chun. Yang Chun did not give the old cypress a chance. His hands changed position again and again, but in an instant, the body of the old cypress was completely pulled out of the ground. Grabbing the main root of the old cypress, without using any spiritual power, he directly threw it up. The huge and complete cypress was directly thrown into the air by Yang Chun, and then fell to the ground far away. With a bang, it hit the ground heavily. Although the old cypress was already at the peak Jidon stage, its body had never left the ground, and it began to panic. Yang Chun no longer cared about it. His figure flashed again, and he came in front of the little tree monster, doing the same thing. No matter how the little tree monster struggled, and how the roots continued to penetrate the depths of the ground, it could not resist the huge force from Yang Chun's hands. After a while, the body of the little tree monster was pulled out of the ground, and then Yang Chun followed the law, throwing the little tree monster and the peak Jidon stage old cypress together. The old patriarch and the future star were pulled out by Yang Chun, and the other cypresses around them were almost crazy. Countless branches and stones, like raindrops, flew toward Yang Chun. Quiet. Yang Chun's voice suddenly became loud, and then there was a buzzing sound in his body, as if a giant bell was ringing in Yang Chun's body, and the low bell sound quickly spread around. Everything that flew to Yang Chun turned into powder silently in an instant. As long as the bell sound was within the range, those cypresses that launched the attack were like being hit by a heavy blow. All stopped moving, and all the branches also softly hung down. At first glance, it seemed that they had fallen into a coma. Chapter 619. Unexpectedly, the old cypress and the little tree monster remained awake. An old man and a young man looked at Yang Chun at the moment, as if they were looking at a devil, full of horror. It's really easy to destroy you, Yang Chun said as he walked to the side of the old and the young. The two tree monsters were rerouting their roots into the soil. When they saw Yang Chun coming over, the little tree monster still wanted to fight. Yang Chen's body suddenly rushed out of two fire dragons and quickly surrounded the two cypresses. Two fire dragons, one purple and one green, flew up and down around the two cypresses and even rubbed their bark as they flew. The raging flame exuded a fierce high temperature, so there was no doubt that Yang Chun could turn them into ashes at any time if he wanted. What did you do to them? The little tree monster was indeed persistent. At this time, he did not care about the situation of himself and the old cypress, but asked about the situation of other cypresses. They just temporarily lost consciousness. Yang Chun replied with a smile. For the little guy who still cared about his companions in this situation, Yang Chun was more and more in tune with his appetite. In order to show that he did not lie, Yang Chen's heart moved, his spiritual power was stimulated, and the golden bell in his body made a muffled sound. But this time it was not like the last time that people were stunned, but it woke them up. Soon all the surrounding cypresses woke up. Everyone saw the two fire dragons beside the old cypress and the little tree monster, and all of them were shocked. But at this moment, everyone knew that the lives of the two people were hanging in the hands of Yang Chun, so no one dared to act rashly. In fact, with the previous blow, all the cypresses knew that even if they joined up, they could not be the opponent of Yang Chun. Now that the patriarch's life was hanging by a thread, no one dared to easily anger Yang Chun, for fear that Yang Chun's anger would lead to unpredictable consequences. It must be known that at this moment, the life and death of the old patriarch and the little tree monster were really in the hands of Yang Chun. The flying sword is still lacking. Why don't you take a look at my flying sword? Yang Chun reached out, and the first wood flying sword appeared in his hand. Even if there was no sword flight or attack, the appearance of the first wood flying sword had already made the cypresses widen their eyes. Taking a few steps forward, Yang Chun stood not far from the body of the old cypress and the little tree monster. He let go of the first wood flying sword and drew a big circle in front of the cypress monsters. Then the sharp blade made two soft sounds and cut the bark of the old cypress and the little tree monster. Yang Chen's first wood flying sword had reached the point where the spiritual power was converged. Looking at the flying sword, at most, it looked good. With the level of these cypresses, it was impossible to perceive the first wood spirit power on the flying sword. However, the old cypress and the little tree monster, who had their bark cut, felt the pure first wood spirit power contained in the flying sword at the moment when the flying sword cut their bodies, and their eyes shone. Until the first wood flying sword disappeared from Yang Chen's body, the eyes of the old cypress and the little tree monster were still reluctant to follow the green afterimage. The old cypress had already put away his flying sword, which could almost be equivalent to a broken sword, and his eyes were full of eagerness. Do I have the qualifications to accept you as a disciple now? Yang Chen's eyes swept over the little tree monster and asked very casually. In fact, needless to say, the little tree monster had already been convinced. However, his stubborn temper still made him like a child. When he saw Yang Chen's eyes looking over, he turned his head in anger and did not speak. It is his blessing that Master is fond of him. The old cypress really saw the wind and saw the rudder. He had just discovered that Yang Chun was in the early Jidan stage. He wanted to turn his face, but this time he immediately changed the direction of the wind. There was such a powerful guy in the Jidan stage willing to accept the little tree monster as a disciple. It was really a blessing of 8 lifetimes. Your qualifications are good, but without a good cultivation method, without the guidance of a master, even if you can stand out in the future, your achievements will be limited. In front of the little tree monster, Yang Chun did not blush and said these words that he did not believe. I can guide you. I can give you the best cultivation method. I can also give you the best magic weapon, the most suitable medicinal pill, and let you become a famous figure in the world. You can think about it. I will never force you. The old tree monster listened to Yang Chen's words, and almost his saliva flowed out. The best cultivation method, the best magic weapon, the most suitable medicinal pill, even the monster race had to covet it. These things that Yang Chun said were too far away from the large cypress monsters here. Cultivation method. Can you also teach my people? The little tree monster finally turned his head and hesitated for a long time before he asked. No. Yang Chan directly shook his head and replied, even if it is your people, it cannot be passed on easily, unless they join my sect. Otherwise, if it is passed on to the outside, I will personally take it back. I think you understand what I mean by taking it back. It was not that Yang Chun cherished these cultivation methods. It was really that some things, if they were not hard-earned, would not be cherished too much. And for the fairness of reward and punishment, it was not necessarily a good thing. How could there be such a good thing in the world? He had not even made the slightest contribution, yet he was already receiving benefits? For Yang Chen's statement, it seemed that the little tree monster also had some expectations, but when he really heard it, he still had some regrets. He originally wanted to take this opportunity to get a little benefit for his people, but he did not expect Yang Chun to be so tight-lipped. However, Yang Chun did not completely refuse. As long as they joined the Chunyang Palace, they could learn the cultivation methods of the Chunyang Palace. To put it bluntly, it was still a problem of standing in line, which was actually very easy to solve. At present, no one had come here to win them, and their group of cypresses, the highest cultivation base, was only a peak Jidan stage. It really could not attract the attention of others. This old man is willing to lead the whole family to join Sir's sect. The old cypress hurriedly expressed his position to Yang Chun. After that, he remembered that he still did not know the identity of Yang Chun, let alone which sect Yang Chun belonged to. He could only ask with some embarrassment, Sir, I haven't asked. I am Yang Chun of the Chunyang Palace. Yang Chun did not hide his identity and said it directly, and did not conceal the strength of the Chunyang Palace. For the time being, my sect can only be regarded as a second-rate sect, not a first-class one. I will let you down. Willing, I am willing. The old cypress hurriedly expressed his position. What a joke! A second-rate sect was not something that these rogue cultivators could compare with. Not to mention anything else, just looking at Yang Chun, who was only in the early Jidan stage, he could sweep them all, and he also let them attack before counterattacking. Such a powerful character. How bad would the sect be? Still not paying respects to the master? The old cypress saw that the little tree monster still hesitated, and hurriedly reminded him. This time, the little tree monster did not insist on anything, and directly bowed to the trunk of Yang Chun. Disciple Mu Bo greets master. Chapter 620. Mu Bo, this little guy was really Mu Bo. Yang Chun listened to him, and his face also showed a smile. The future monstrous talent, Mu Bo, finally worshipped under his own door. With Mu Bo's apprenticeship in Yang Chen's mind, in addition to receiving Mu Bo's intention to become his apprentice, there was also a monster soul. This was just like the monster soul that Yang Chun paid for the deal with Shi Kuei and Xiesha. The apprenticeship of the monster race was by no means a simple kowtow, but it was necessary to establish a master-apprentice relationship on the monster soul. Compared to the apprenticeship of the cultivators, it was much more formal. Moreover, there was a monster soul exchange. Generally speaking, the monster race would not betray their master. At this point, the monster race was much more important than the human cultivators. Get up. Yang Chun reached out slightly and accepted Mu Bo's apprenticeship. Next, the old cypress took the whole family to join the Chunyang Palace Hall of Eccentrics. In this matter, Yang Chun could, of course, make a direct decision. Presumably, the head of the palace would not say much. After all the loyal monster souls of the cypress monsters were received, Yang Chun was not stingy. The cultivation methods prepared for Mu Bo were directly put to use. This is a foundation-laying cultivation method. Your cultivation relies too much on instinct, and the level is not high. Since it was a member of the sect, Yang Chun certainly would not hide it. He directly commented, "You can start practicing this cultivation method again, regardless of the level of cultivation, especially the old patriarch." Yang Chun turned his head to the side of the old cypress patriarch and smiled. Before the cultivation of the old patriarch, there were some detours, so he could not form his nascent soul. After the foundation is relaid, forming the nascent soul will not be a problem. The old patriarch was also a knowledgeable person. After getting the jade slip, and scanning it with his divine sense, he immediately understood the brilliance of it. Compared to staying here alone and relying on his instincts to cultivate, he did not know how many times better it was. Under the great joy, he immediately thanked him. There is also a spirit-tempering art cultivated by the Yao clan, a cultivation technique for cultivating one's divine sense. Yang Chun also took out a copy of the cultivation technique jade slip that he had obtained from the banyan tree cave and handed it over to the old patriarch. Cultivate your divine sense more. It will be beneficial. There is no need for Yang Chun to elaborate. Everyone knew the benefits of cultivating their spiritual consciousness. Not to mention anything else, just Yang Chun in the early Jidan stage could release the spiritual awareness of the Dashang stage, and the people of their clan were suppressed and did not dare to move. His power was evident. Hearing what Yang Chun said, everyone was naturally happy. There's also a demonic king transformation art. It can allow you to leave your original body and transform into a demonic body. Since he was going to give them to them, he might as well give them all at once. This time, Yang Chun took out the first step demon king transformation art. This monster king transformation secret art was not the transformation secret art that Yang Chun obtained from the spiritual world, but the cultivation method on the jade slip that he snatched from the hands of the second city lord. After cultivation, one could not directly transform into a human body, but become a monster body with a human body and a monster head. Most of the monster race in the banyan tree cave cultivated this cultivation method. If this cultivation method of the monster race could be cultivated to the highest level, it could also be separated from the monster body, but it required a deep effort. Yang Chun did not require them to be able to cultivate to the extreme. As long as their cultivation base reached a certain level, they could transfer to the transformation secret art of the spiritual world and directly transform into a human body. Of course, these things were the benefits of joining the new sect. Yang Chun said that there were higher-level cultivation methods, but they needed to reach the Yuanying stage to be able to cultivate, including the transformation secret art. The spiritual veins under this cypress forest were somewhat scattered. Yang Chun personally made a move and arranged a spirit-gathering formation within a radius of 10 miles, which could effectively restrain the overflow of these spiritual veins within this range. Hundreds of cypresses cultivated in this spirit-gathering formation, and the effect was at least several times stronger than before. Even if they haven't started to cultivate the foundation-laying cultivation method, the strength of the spiritual power alone made everyone surprised. With the organization, it was really different. Cultivation methods, spiritual veins, almost instantaneously. The old patriarch almost jumped up with excitement. Others had not seen these cultivation methods, but the old patriarch had seen them from the beginning. Although he did not cultivate it, he also knew that it was definitely a powerful cultivation method suitable for their clan. At the same time of excitement, the old patriarch also felt lucky for his grandson's luck. If it wasn't for Yang Chun looking at Mu Bo and wanting to accept him as an apprentice, maybe this large and small family of hundreds of cypresses dared to contradict Yang Chun before, and they would be directly exterminated by Yang Chun. Thinking of this, the old patriarch was also full of fear. However, now there was no such concern at all. They joined the Chunyang Palace Hall of Eccentrics, and Mu Bo was also accepted as an apprentice by Yang Chun. In the future, they would barely be a family, and they would no longer have to worry about Yang Chun looking for them to settle accounts. Naturally, the old patriarch could also think that with Yang Chun's magnanimity, he would definitely not put that little thing in his heart. I will stay here for a while and guide Mu Bo's cultivation. Yang Chun accepted the apprentice and did not talk much nonsense. He directly explained his arrangements. During this time, if you have any questions in cultivation, you can also ask me. I will try my best to answer. The old patriarch was overjoyed and immediately began to pass down the cultivation method. Then he respectfully invited Yang Chun to do a lecture and explain these cultivation methods in detail. This kind of work of pointing out new people, Yang Chun had already done it skillfully when he was a disciple in Yeshio Villa. Although it was only a monster race cultivation method, under Yang Chun's experience, a foundation-laying cultivation method of the monster race, there was really nothing that could baffle Yang Chun. No matter who raised a question, Yang Chun could find an absolutely suitable answer. And it was an answer that these cypresses had never heard or seen before, but they didn't need to practice to feel that it was reasonable. There were a few cypresses who were not convinced at first and even asked a few problems they had encountered in their previous cultivation. Now that they had solved it, they wanted to embarrass Yang Chun through these. As a result, what surprised all the cypresses was that Yang Chun did not even think about it and answer their questions. Moreover, he directly concluded that they no longer had these problems. How would they solve it at that time? What method should be more appropriate? It was as if he had seen it with his own eyes. Yang Chen's words almost hit the crux of all the guys who asked questions. After listening to Yang Chen's explanation, they understood what mistakes they had made in the past. Originally, they were complacent that they had passed a certain threshold. Now, they understood that many of the troubles in cultivation were the sequelae left over from that year. This time, everyone was sincerely convinced. After this time, no one had any doubts about Yang Chun. All of them were humbly asking for advice, especially the old cypresses and Mu Bo, who asked the most frequently, and Yang Chun also explained patiently. Anyway, when a person asked a question, everyone was in contact with Yang Chun at the same time. Everyone was of the same race, and many of the problems were the same. Chapter 6:21. After listening to Yang Chen's explanation, when they cultivated again, everyone clearly felt the improvement of their cultivation speed. This was not only the credit of the spirit-gathering array, but the improvement brought by the cultivation method of the system could not be underestimated. For a time, the entire cypress monster family was all rejoicing, and everyone's confidence was greatly boosted. Even the old cypress seemed to see the hope of forming his nascent soul. Wood monsters were different from other cultivators. Sometimes when their cultivation realm was low, they could not wait to attack a high realm before their lifespan would run out and they would die. But the wood monsters were not the same. Generally, as long as the wood monsters opened their spiritual wisdom, they could basically survive for many years. Compared with human beings, it was too long. Basically, when the human cultivators had died, the wood monsters could still rely on their long life to slowly attack the realm. If at this time, with someone's guidance, naturally there was a great hope to enter a high level. Although everyone was happy, this did not prevent everyone from envying Mu Bo, because after passing the cultivation method to everyone, Yang Chun actually took Mu Bo directly to the other side and began to teach him alone. However, even if they were envious, they could not be envious. Yang Chun was now the master of Mu Bo. It was normal for the master to instruct the disciple alone. Even if other cypresses were envious, they could only sigh. Yang Chun taught alone. Not only did he take Mu Bo to the side, but he also directly arranged a magic array to isolate the spiritual awareness of all the cypresses. He and Mu Bo were in the array, and others could not explore the situation inside. Mu Bo, your cultivation qualifications are very good. So even if you practice the same cultivation method as everyone else, you can still be outstanding. Yang Chun explained to Mu Bo very seriously, so, in terms of cultivation method, I will not take too special care of you for the time being. Master has already taught this disciple the foundation-laying cultivation method. This disciple understands. Mu Bo respectfully responded to Yang Chun. There was no dissatisfaction. You have this mentality, very good. Yang Chun nodded and praised with satisfaction. However, since I am your master and you are my disciple, I still have to give you a greeting gift. Following Yang Chen's words, a large pile of leaves suddenly appeared in Yang Chen's hand. At this time, Mu Bo also looked over. When he saw the large pile of leaves, his eyes suddenly lit up. The pile of leaves exuded an extremely pure first wood aura, which was the favorite aura of the first wood monster race, like Mu Bo. Yang Chen said that this was a greeting gift for him. Could this be it? In Yang Chen's hand was a large pile of leaves of Penglai Divine Wood. However, these leaves were taken from the Penglai Divine Wood that Yang Chun used to refine the first wood flying sword. In fact, at that time, Yang Chun only took the trunk and main root. Many of the side branches and leaves were cut off, and he did not replant them. These scattered branches and leaves were just a tonic for Mubo. Of course, his current cultivation base was still low, far from being able to directly swallow a whole Penglai Divine with like the old tree demon Gui Shanyu. However, there was no problem at all in absorbing these leaves for the time being. I will stay here for a year. These leaves and some branches, during this year, you can absorb as much as you can. Yang Chun said directly. These things were left for Mubo. Of course, he would absorb as much as he could. Although Mubo did not know what kind of tree these leaves were, he could understand the preciousness of these leaves simply by instinct. When he heard that there were still some branches, he was even more surprised. He immediately thanked Yang Chun again and then took the leaves from his hand. The trunk cracked open a small mouth and put the leaves of the Penglai Divine Wood in it. During the time when Mubo absorbed the leaves of the Penglai Divine Wood, Yang Chun also stayed here. In addition to pointing out the cultivation of the cypresses, he was tempering his own body, refining technique. The bitter wind tempered all the cypresses here extremely well. Although it was not so powerful when facing Yang Chun knew how strong these guys were if they were put outside. These cypresses, in addition to conquering them by force, Yang Chun also needed to be gentle and let them be completely loyal to the Chunyang Palace. The previous cultivation method and spirit gathering array, together with the guidance of Yang Chun, were soft. However, these are not enough. Yang Chun still wanted to add more. For these ordinary cypresses, Yang Chun also gave them a motivation to cultivate. A branch of the Penglai Divine Wood with the thickness of a finger. As long as one of them cultivated to the peak Jidan realm, they could get such a branch as a reward. Of course, the premise was to use the brand new foundation cultivation method of the tree monster, rather than the self-exploration method of their original cultivation. The attraction of the Penglai Divine Wood was really extraordinary. Although the cypresses did not know what the branch was, the pure aura exuded from it made them instantly attracted. The eyes of the big tree scars on the trunk almost burst out of fire, staring at the branches and wishing to swallow them with their eyes. In addition, you can't cultivate the monster body now, let alone the human form, so you can't return to the sect for the time being. Yang Chun said some words in the front and also left enough space for himself. The transformation secret art is carefully cultivated. After 30 years, it is estimated that you can all cultivate the monster body. At that time, I will come back to take you back to the sect. The environment here is special, and the cold wind is of great benefit to the body refining. On weekdays, all the cultivation must be carried out in the astral wind. Yang Chun did not want these guys to be greedy for the overflowing aura in the spirit gathering array. The spirit gathering array only allows each person to stay in it for up to 4 hours a day, so the aura is concentrated and it is good for everyone. No one disobeyed Yang Chun's words. His instructions had already made all the cypresses here shocked. Since the previous instructions were so correct, what he said now must be correct. Mubo's qualifications were really outstanding. In less than a month, he absorbed all the leaves of the Penglai Divine Wood given to him by Yang Chun. In the spiritual power of his cultivation, there is also a trace of the aura of the Penglai Divine Wood. For his own apprentice, Yang Chun would certainly not be stingy. He directly gave all the remaining leaves of the Penglai Divine Wood to Mubo. These were prepared for him. The earlier Mubo absorbed it, the earlier he would become the powerful evildoer in the future. While guiding the cultivation of Mubo and guiding the cultivation of the cypresses, Yang Chun did not forget to temper his yellow, turbaned strongman body, refining technique day and night. When everyone saw that Yang Chun was cultivating in the astral wind, they were even more unwilling and followed. Soon, a year had passed in the midst of everyone's painstaking cultivation. Chapter 622. During the year, in addition to the normal cultivation of the foundation laying cultivation method, the transformation secret art, and the spirit refining secret art, Mubo spent the rest of the time constantly absorbing the branches and leaves of the Penglai Divine Wood given to him by Yang Chun. A whole leaf of the Penglai Divine Wood, Mubo only took half a year to completely absorb it. At first, the speed was still relatively slow, but later it became faster and faster, from 1 leaf to 10 leaves, and then to 100 leaves. The speed was more than 100 times faster than before, and the aura of the Panlai divine wood was getting stronger and stronger. Other cypresses certainly discovered the changes in Mubo, but everyone was not jealous. First, Mubo was their younger generation. Second, Mubo was the apprentice of Yang Chun. The master gave the apprentice a little benefit. It was really not worth being jealous. Half a year later, Yang Chun began to give Mubo some small branches. If it was too thick, Mubai couldn't do anything about it now. Don't look at Mubo, who was already a master of the Jidan stage, but he relied on his own instinct to cultivate. After all, it was not enough. All the spiritual power was recultivated, and with the help of the Panlai divine wood, the advancement was also unusually fast. After all, there was the foundation of the Jidan stage, just like Gao Yu in the past. Even if he gave up his original cultivation base and recultivated his spiritual power, the advancement was also rapid. In half a year, Mubo had recultivated to the middle stage of the Qi refining stage. The speed of advancement was even unmatched by people like Yang Chun and Gao Yu, who had the full value of the acquired spirit root. The monster race was sometimes different from human cultivators, especially the tree species. The long-term accumulation over the years made it very easy for them to cross the threshold, and they did not even have to worry about the consolidation of their cultivation base. Of course, the premise was that these accumulations were long enough, and Mubo met such conditions. In fact, every tree demon would experience thousands of years or even longer before opening their wisdom, so the accumulation of these times was not a problem for them at all. This was also the reason why the tree ants were always getting stronger and stronger. Yang Chen's body, under the attention of the tree monsters, was getting stronger and stronger. Yang Chun already felt that after several years of cultivation in the astral wind, the second layer of the body refining technique had already shown signs of great accomplishment. The initial requirement for practicing the Yellow Turban Warlock's body tempering technique was the strength of 1,000 caddies. After practicing the first layer, one would reach the strength of 10,000 caddies. However, after reaching the great accomplishment of the second layer, there was no longer a detailed description of the quantity. Instead, it was changed into another term called mountain picking strength. Previously, Yang Chun effortlessly pulled out the bodies of the old cypress tree and Mubo directly from the ground, which had shocked everyone. What was the concept of pulling out an old cypress tree that had grown for thousands of years from the ground? Not to mention anything else, just the huge root system alone might have occupied an area of several acres. When the power of the soil gathered by each root was gathered together, it was definitely a terrifying force. Not to mention pulling it out, it was already a great achievement to be able to shake it a little. However, when Yang Chun uprooted the 2 giant trees, there was no pause and relaxation. It was done in one go. What made the surrounding cypresses even more scared was that when Yang Chun did this, he did not use his own spiritual power. They could not feel any spiritual power fluctuations. Perhaps the cypresses did not have the ability to feel the spiritual power fluctuations of Yang Chun, or Yang Chen's pure physical strength, but no matter which one, it was not good news for the cypresses. Now, seeing Yang Chun practicing the body refining technique in the astral wind, the cypresses understood that it was the pure physical strength of Yang Chun. Not to mention anything else, just looking at him now waving the thick and terrifying huge stone pillar, he could even play a set of tricks. Even if the cypresses were not convinced, in the face of Yang Chun, they would not dare to stab him. It must be known that the huge stone pillar had far exceeded the weight of 10,000 jin. Even the tree monsters, who were famous for their strength, could not pick it up, let alone wave it. Mubo and the old cypress, plus the 3 strongest cypresses, could work together to carry the stone pillar that Yang Chun had refined. After discovering this, Mubo admired his master even more. Yang Chen's body shape had reached the limit. Yang Chen knew that after reaching the realm of mountain picking strength, the body would no longer change. The main focus of the 3rd layer of the body refining technique was to begin to temper the internal organs. Becoming stronger from the inside out, This was the fundamental goal of the yellow turban strongman technique. After cultivating for almost 5 months again, there was a click sound in Yang Chen's body. This sound seemed to come from the inside of the body, and only Yang Chen himself could hear it, as if some shackles had been opened. The body suddenly felt relaxed, and the muscles that had always been tight seemed to become relaxed and soft after the click sound. Yang Chen stopped and gently moved his hands and feet, but there was an indescribable feeling of power in his hands. Yang Chen understood in his heart that the second layer of the body refining technique had already reached the great accomplishment realm. This was a complete surprise. Before Yang Chen came here, he did not think that this cold astral wind could be used to refine the body. He did not expect to complete the second layer of the body refining technique here. The next cultivation of the body refining technique would focus on strengthening the internal organs, and at the same time, it would slowly adjust the muscles to normal. In other words, Yang Chen's body shape would also begin to slowly return to its original state, and it would no longer be as muscular as it was now. Counting the days, it had been 11 months since he found Mu Bo. In another month, it would be time for Yang Chen to leave. When Yang Chen was cultivating for 5 months, Mu Bo was not idle. He swallowed nearly 200 tiny branches of the Penglai Divine Wood. Now Mu Bo's body already had a trace of pure Penglai Divine Wood aura. The speed of his cultivation had become more and more abnormal. In less than a year, he had advanced from the early stage of the Qi refining to the late stage of the Qi refining. According to this progress, Mu Bo's refoundation would only be a matter of 2 or 3 years. Maybe when Yang Chen came again after 30 years, Mu Bo would be able to recondense his Dan. Seeing that he was about to leave, Yang Chen took Mu Bo into the illusion formation alone again. This time, it was no longer a branch of the Penglai Divine Wood, but a large cup of the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid. Refining the Penglai Divine Wood, with Mu Bo's current cultivation base, there would inevitably be some impurities in his body. The 4 C's mysterious coral liquid could just discharge these impurities, so that Mu Bo's cultivation path would be smoother in the future. After taking the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid, Mu Bo's performance was different from that of human beings. It was not a deep sleep, but a complete transformation into its body, showing a complete cypress tree. It cannot be seen that this was a cypress monster. However, a large amount of tree sap soon appeared on the tree trunk. Chapter 6:23. In this state, Mu Bo has been in this state for half a month. Next, Yang Chen gave him a cup of the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid, so that Mu Bo entered this state again and discharged more resin. These resin were the impurities on Mu Bo's body. After removing these, Mu Bo suddenly discovered the changes in his body. Although Yang Chen did not explain to him the preciousness of the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid, Mu Bo also understood that this was not an easy thing to get. For his master's cultivation, Mu Bo was grateful. Once again answering the questions of the cypress monsters, it was finally time for Yang Chen to leave. Although Yang Chen came here in a very rude and unreasonable way at the beginning, after a year of getting along, these cypresses still had some reluctance to part with him. Step up your cultivation. Wait until the monster body is achieved. After 30 years, I will personally come to take you back to the sect. Yang Chen once again promised a group of cypress monsters to see each other again. He drove the flying sword and embarked on the process of returning to the Central Plains. There were few people here. Even the monster race rarely came here. The cypress monsters were very safe. 30 years for the people in the cultivation world. It was just a blink of an eye. He believed that everyone would be able to meet again soon. Although the strength of these cypress monsters was now low, he believed that after arriving at the Chunyang Palace, their spiritual power would be abundant, and they would be trained by the old tree demon. They would definitely be the best guards to guard the mountain gate. Not only that, if they could keep up with Yang Chen's fast-moving master, after overcoming their slow shortcomings, even if it was a siege, they could also become the main force. He cultivated the first with true secret art, seized the inheritance of the second city master, subdued such a group of cypress monsters, accepted the future evildoer Mu Bo as an apprentice, and accidentally cultivated the second layer of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Yang Chen's trip was really fruitful. Calculating the time, it seemed that he had not seen Sun Qingxue for more than 30 years, almost 40 years. With Yang Chen's understanding of Sun Qingxue's cultivation, at this time, Sun Qingxue should have already condensed her core. It was time to go and see this little girl. Back when Yang Chen was being chased by Luo Yuan, there was no news of him at all. Everyone thought that Yang Chen was dead, but Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan actually wore mourning clothes for him. Yang Chen didn't know how to repay them. Even if there was still one last hurdle in his heart that he had yet to overcome, this did not prevent him from being grateful to the little lass, nor did it prevent him from seeing her. The astral wind area could also temper the body. Yang Chen just flew slowly in the right direction until he was out of the astral wind area. Then he summoned the shuttle and flew in the direction of the Blue Cloud sect. From Chunyang Palace to the 10,000 Trees Forest, it took Yang Chen a whole year to find where Mu Bo was, and he spent another year on the road. But in the latter year, Yang Chen was mostly refining his body. The journey back this time did not take that long. It only took a year for them to return to the Middle Earth. Originally, Zhu and Abai estimated that under the direct soaking of the first wood true essence spiritual solution, the Panlai Divine would open its wisdom after a year and could enter the state of cultivation. However, obviously, Zhu and Abai underestimated the power of the Panlai Divine wood and also underestimated the conditions needed for the Panlai Divine wood to open its wisdom. Although Yang Chen had used the most powerful way to cultivate them, these Panlai Divine woods still opened their wisdom one by one after Yang Chen returned to the Central Plains. Feeling the movement in the medicine garden, Yang Chen hurriedly stopped the shuttle, found a safe place, and directly entered the second layer of the medicine garden. Zhu and Abai came up to greet him for the first time, and then waited with Yang Chen at the edge of the first wood true essence spiritual solution pool, waiting for the Panlai Divine wood's wisdom to open. Soon, a Panlai Divine wood changed. Suddenly, two scar-like things appeared on the smooth and straight tree trunk. Then, the things moved and opened, revealing a pair of huge eyes that blankly looked around. Then, he saw Yang Chen at a glance, and his eyes showed a joyful light. In Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, there was suddenly a consciousness connection, and he felt the joy coming from it. Yang Chen was also happy, and directly passed his thoughts over, letting him enjoy the first wood true essence spiritual solution. At the same time, he also passed the 3 cultivation methods to the Cypress Demon family. Those were the foundational cultivation methods. Some of the advanced cultivation methods that Yang Chen knew were from the spiritual world, and at least the Yuanying stage could be cultivated. Although the Panlai Divine wood was powerful, it had just opened its wisdom, and it was better to use these foundational cultivation methods. Naturally, there was absolute trust in Yang Chen. This Panlai Divine wood monster immediately began to practice according to Yang Chen's instructions. Soon, the second Panlai Divine would open its eyes. In this way, Yang Chen would not favor one and discriminate against the other. All the cultivation methods were passed down, and he still comforted it and guided its cultivation. Next, the third, the fourth, until the 24th. Each of them was treated the same way. These Panlai tree demons opened their eyes and saw Yang Chen, and there was already Yang Chen's aura in their hearts. Naturally, they regarded Yang Chen as their own master. Master, the rest of these will not open their wisdom again. Zhu saw that Yang Chen was still waiting and gently reminded him. Not all Panlai Divine could become a monster. The remaining ones were the corners of the box that was made by the land at the time. There may be some damage, so it was impossible to cultivate. In the first wood true essence spiritual solution pool, there were still 7 Panlai Divine woods that were thriving, but they could only be Panlai Divine woods, and it was impossible to become a Panlai tree demon. This result made Yang Chen somewhat regretful, but Yang Chen also knew that the sky was not complete, and he could not demand too much. There were 24 Panlai tree demons, which was already incredible to the extreme. In particular, when these Penglai tree demons began to cultivate the foundation, laying cultivation method in the first with true essence spiritual solution pool, the speed of advancement made Yang Chen stunned. Even a monstrous genius like Mu Bo had to recultivate in the Jiedon stage for more than a year to be able to build the foundation, but these Penglai tree demons in front of him, in just 2 days, have already broken through the early Qi refining stage and entered the middle Qi refining stage. Connected with the consciousness of the Penglai tree demon, Yang Chen certainly knew that there was no problem with these Penglai divine woods at all. However, the speed of concealment was too shocking. It was indeed a powerful tree that was named with the word divine. In Yang Chen's mind, he suddenly remembered a heavenly cycle constellation formation, a ray left by a certain immortal on the immortal executioner stage before he died. It seemed that this formation was to be performed by 24 masters with similar cultivation bases and tacit understanding. 24 Penglai tree demons opened their wisdom on the same day and cultivated at the same time. Naturally, their cultivation was equal. As for the tacit understanding, because of the communication of Yang Chen, the 24 Penglai tree demons could almost be said to be like conjoined babies, and their minds were interconnected. This large array was simply tailor-made for them.